Hello, mic check, mic check. Welcome to the today's masterclass. This is going to be one of my first ever live streams directly from YouTube. I've done a lot of webinars in the past, and this is my first on YouTube. So it's always fun, switching things up. But if you're here tuning in with me live, let me see in the chat how many people we got here so far as we figure out all the tech issues. Just want to make sure I got the people in the room with me. So let's see. If you could type in the chat where you're tuning in from, that would be great, just so I can make sure that you guys can actually hear me. I'll start it off. I'm in Stanford. There we go. So you guys should be able to see that in the chat. Matt from Southern California. All right, perfect. Matt, I appreciate your patience. It's always fun. I normally do webinars on Zoom, and there's another platform I use that do webinars on, but this one is, again, my first time doing it on YouTube, which is kind of interesting. I've seen somebody that I am learning from on YouTube do it, and I was like, that'd be a good idea. All right, we got Frank tuning in from Indian Trail, North Carolina. Shout out Frank. Frank, you are always a great supporter. Make sure, Frank, if Marina's available, make sure to get her on the call. I'm just gonna make sure everything's looking good on my end. All right, and I want to make sure I'm respectful of your guys' time. So whoever's not here on time, we're gonna give it another couple seconds. But I'll start off with you, Matt. Matt, have you ever done a webinar or a seminar of some sort at all? Let me know in the chat. And then same for you, Frank. Just a quick temperature check. Have you ever done or hosted a webinar or a seminar? If you don't know the difference, it's pretty much the same thing. Seminars in person, webinars online. Same material, though. Yes, first-time buyer seminar. Okay, so Matt has some experience. All right, cool. And then Frank, what about you? Have you ever done a webinar or seminar before? Okay, we got Jennifer from Atlanta. Jennifer, shout out to you. I was just catching up with you yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Good to see you here. Jennifer, quick question. Have you ever done a webinar or a seminar before for real estate? I'm just trying to get a quick temperature check, and then at 12:05, we're going to get right into today's material. No, yes, you were. Yeah, okay, cool. It's Molly. Okay, Molly's here. Hey, Molly, how's it going? We want to start. Okay, cool. So you guys are in the right room. Bear with me. Just had to get some water. But again, you guys are here on time. So we're going to get right into today's presentation. Right? So let's get this started. All right. So what if there's a way to get 50 to 100 families at your next open house? Right? And they were all pre-registered to be there. So you have their contact info before they even show up. What if that was possible? See, I think one of the biggest problems in the real estate industry is that the way consumers buy and sell houses has changed over the years, right? As well as the way that they hire agents. And for the most part, most agents that I know are still stuck in pre-pandemic marketing strategies, right? And in this first part of this webinar series, it's going to be 6 parts, so it's going to be a long afternoon. But in this first video here, I'm going to show you a new way, a different way to generate clients online that you probably are overlooking and probably sleeping on. Again, it's not a super popular strategy, so let's get into it. So as you know, this title is called The Ultimate Guide to Webinars. Let me share with you really quickly how I got into the world of webinars and digital marketing. So about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, I was in this free real estate group for anyone that doesn't know. It's called Early Birds Talking Real Estate. They meet from 6:30 to 7 every morning. And in that group, and at that time period, I was brand new to the business. I was 4 months in, just closed my first rental. So I had no experience whatsoever really in real estate. I would just go in, log in, and then just listen. But one day they were talking about social media. And around this time, I was like, you know what? This might be my time to shine. I finally have something I can share on. And so I shared 5 simple tips. The co-host of that group decided to ask me, hey, John, do you mind teaching a class? And I responded, no, I've never taught a class before. And instead of, leaving the situation as is, for whatever reason, she decided to respond back, hey, John, let me know when you want it scheduled. In that very first class, I ended up getting a little over 440 real estate agents registered for it. It's probably the craziest thing ever, and I'll get into a little bit how I was able to do that. But that first class went so well that we ended up doing another class and another class. And eventually, I just went all in on teaching social media marketing, and eventually pivoted to AI. Fast forward about a year and a half from that first class that I taught, I ended up teaching another webinar. This one was a multi-day one, and it went so well that at the end of it, when I pitched my offer, I ended up making 33,000 in a week. Right, that same day, I ended up driving over to my restaurant job, quitting my job, and it's been about to be 3 years since I've quit that job, and I've never looked back since. And that's why I am all in on webinars, because when you have some sort of expertise that you can help other people with, they're gonna see you in a different lens that they wouldn't normally see you in if they watched like a 30-second little TikTok or a random video on YouTube, right? Because a webinar is like a pretty much a speech, right? And as you know, like the great speakers, the Tony Robbins, the Mel Robbins, the Les Browns, the Brene Browns, all the great speakers, when they deliver a keynote, that message impacts millions. So you have so much more leverage by creating a really good webinar. And so let's kind of get into it. So a little bit more. So during the pandemic, open houses was kind of like the go-to, right? If you wanted to get a bunch of people into your pipeline, you would host an open house during the pandemic, and you would get 50, sometimes more families to come to your open house, and it was crazy. And then eventually things started to die down. Interest rates started to go up, supply started to catch up a bit, so the demand was being met. The economy spending started to slow down, so open house started to kind of die a little bit. But they still work. I want to make that quick disclaimer. But sometimes it could be unpredictable. And in fact, I was actually talking to Jennifer yesterday about how she had two families come to one of the things that she was hosting just past weekend, right? Or a couple weekends ago, right? So 50 in comparison to two, right, is a large drop. And so again, sometimes open houses can be get a lot of people, but it's kind of hit or miss. And so I mentioned, how could we get 50 to 100 leads consistently every single month? And that is with webinars, right? You don't have to spend your afternoon, right, going to open houses. You don't have to spend hours driving there, putting your signs up and down the street. You don't have to do all the circle prospecting the days prior, right? You don't have to go door knocking the nosy neighbors to hopefully get them to come. With one webinar, you can literally sit in your house, right? I call it business comfy, right? Because the top half could be business, right? You could wear your suit and tie or whatever, a nice dress shirt, right? And then in your waist down, you could just wear pajamas, shorts, or whatever you'd like, and no one will be able to tell, especially if you're still providing valuable information, right? So with webinars, you can save so much more time. You're not gonna have to buy any of the signage or any of the crazy stuff. You're not gonna have to buy cookies and crackers and little wines for your attendees. So you're saving money there, right? You don't have to print out any flyers, right? You don't have to bother other agents to come, right? There's so much more leverage that you get from doing a webinar and the comfort of your own living room than there is from doing open houses or any other pre-pandemic marketing strategy, I like to call it, right? Which makes it easier for you because if something has a lot of steps involved, you're more likely not to stick with it. So let's kind of get into like what is a webinar, because I know in like the digital marketing world, it's something that is pretty common, but for anyone that's watching that's never heard the word webinar before, it's pretty much like a web class. It's a seminar online, right? Hence the word webinar. Um, Now, normally, webinars don't really work all that well for most agents. And that's because most agents don't do it properly. And here's the most common mistakes I see when agents are hosting their either first time buyer seminars or seller seminars or investor seminars, you name it. Here are the most common mistakes that I see. The first is either bad marketing or no marketing, meaning the flyers that they're posting aren't appealing, so it doesn't get anyone's attention, or they're waiting too last minute to start telling people about it, or they're just doing basically just word of mouth and hoping that people sign up for it. So bad marketing, no marketing. And so when it comes time to host a webinar, right, no one actually shows up to it. Like right now, this webinar that I'm hosting live, I think I've gotten maybe, I think the last time I checked this morning was about 50 people registered. And that's on a couple emails that I sent out, and I started marketing it this past Friday. And now we have some people here live with me. Right. But if you have bad marketing or no marketing, you're not going to be able to get 50 people registered. Right. The second thing I see that a lot of agents mess up on is they have a bad landing page. Now, if you don't know what a landing page is essentially the page that you send people to on your website or a third-party platform where they can register for the class. So most agents, what they do is they'll either have like a Google form, right, that they send people to directly, and that's how they'll track, who signs up, or they'll use Eventbrite. So let's talk about both. If you're sending people to a Google form to register for your webinar, that is super inconvenient for you because Google Forms doesn't send out automated reminders, and they don't send out, they don't upload to your CRM automatically, right? So you have a lot more steps involved when you're using a Google form. Now, the next thing is Eventbrite. Eventbrite is cool and all, but the problem with Eventbrite is, and it's kind of similar, it doesn't upload automatically to your CRM. So let's say you do a first-time homebuyer seminar, right, or a webinar, and you get 30 people to register. Well, now you have to export that file, right? Then take that file, go into your CRM, upload that file, make sure that they're tagged properly, right? And then hope that, they get the reminder sequences from Eventbrite and then follow-up sequences afterwards. So again, Eventbrite is a little bit better, but it's still not that great because, again, you have more steps involved. And although the steps are tedious, it's usually the tedious things that stop us from doing the thing altogether. So those are that's the second mistake, bad landing page. And the reason why this is also a big mistake is because if you have a bad landing page, it's going to make people not sign up. And I'll get into a little bit more later, but the most important part of a landing page is curiosity. If you have a landing page and people can see or guess in a couple seconds, like, what it's going to be about, then they're more likely not to show up. Like if you take a look at my landing page when you register for this webinar, it was like, I think I said, for top producers who are struggling to get leads online, here's the most overlooked and underappreciated lead gen strategy to get 50 to 100 leads in the next 30 days or something like that. I forget what I said, but if you were to just read that, it doesn't tell you what I'm going to talk about, right? Now, you guys who are here live with me, I told you guys, I might have most of you all personally, so you guys know this about webinars. But for anyone that would have seen that landing page, like, wow, I know I need to get some 50, more leads, but I'm not sure how he's doing it. Okay, let me sign up and see what this is about. There's no better strategy to get people to show up to your webinar or sign up for your webinar than curiosity. All right. Now, the third big mistake, so we have so far bad marketing. The second big mistake is bad reminder bad landing page. The third mistake is a bad reminder sequence, or AKA I like to call it an indoctrination sequence. So a reminder sequence / indoctrination sequence, pretty much before the actual class starts, you want to have a series of either text, emails, DMs, maybe a personal call. It doesn't matter how you reach out, the medium that you're using to reach out. It's just a series of touches before the webinar to get people excited to show up, right? And if you don't remind people and excite people, they're more likely to forget that the webinar they even registered for. You got to remember, most of the times, webinars are free. And most people just put in their, name and email, which sometimes Facebook automatically, auto-populates for them, or their phone auto-populates for them. So there's like no investment on their end just to sign up. So if there's no investment on them to sign up, there's no skin in the game, them not showing up, they don't lose anything. So it's important to have a good reminder sequence to get people excited, but to also get them to show up, right? They took the time out of their day, even though it wasn't much, to put their email and opt in. Now they need something to remind them. And even if you had, say, hey, add this link to your calendar, most people, unfortunately, don't add the link to their calendar. So you have to make sure that you remind them. Today, I had an email go live this morning at 9 o'clock for this webinar, and then I sent out a text, I think, close to 10 o'clock to remind people, right? And right now, here live, we got about 18 people here watching with me. So again, having a reminder sequence is very important. Now, the fourth big mistake I see a lot of real estate agents make is a bad presentation. Now, If you have a bad presentation, it doesn't matter how many people register, how many people show up. If you have a bad presentation, no one will stay to the end or they won't pay attention. Now, I'm going to go like super in depth on how to create your presentation. Like I'm going to walk you through step by step how like every slide, what to put, how to outline your presentation, how to convert from your presentation in the next couple parts of this overall series. But having a bad presentation will pretty much kill your conversions. Now, the fifth big mistake is a bad offer, right? If you don't have a solid offer at the end of it, then more people aren't going to take you up on it. Now, what's a bad offer? A bad offer is either A, an offer that doesn't really provide value to the person, or B, sounds like what everyone else is offering. So most agents have a valuable offer, right? But they offer what everyone else is offering. So for example, let's say you want to do a first-time homebuyer seminar, right? You're going to offer a complimentary buyer consultation or a complimentary home buyer strategy session, right? All the agents are using the same exact verbiage. And so if you're using the same verbiage as everyone else, they're going to categorize you in the same bucket as everyone else. And the moment they can compare you to what everyone else is doing is the moment you lost them, right? Because then they're going to be like, oh, well, so-and-so can just do it for less, or so-and-so can do it, and they're not charging me or whatever, So make sure that you have a solid offer. And again, I'll get deeper into that later. But the last and final mistake that I see most agents make, and this is probably the biggest mistake, is bad follow-up, right? No one remembers the next step. So even if you are on the presentation and say, hey, I hope you guys got tons of value. Hey, make sure to book your free consultation, whatever. Most of the time, when you host a webinar, roughly half the people that end up signing up in total. So let's say you get 100 people registered and you get 10 people total to sign up. Usually the way it breaks down is 5 people will register there live, right? And then the remaining 5, if you have a good follow-up sequence, will register afterwards, right? Via the email sequence or text reminder sequence, or whatever sequence you're using. So if you don't have a follow-up sequence after the presentation is over, right, you're losing out on 50% of potential customers. Right? Sometimes they might not be in the right, place to take you up on booking a consultation. Sometimes they may be driving. Sometimes they may be just busy with other things on their mind. They might be stressed out, or sometimes they just need a little bit of urgency, right? Or scarcity. There's a tons of reason why people don't buy directly on the webinar. But if you don't have a follow-up sequence afterwards, people won't be able to remember, 1, and 2, take that next step. So again, just to quickly list out all the 6 most common mistakes I see is bad marketing or no marketing. That makes people not know about it, so no one registers. Then if people hear about it, the next big mistake I see is a bad landing page. If you tell people about it, but you have a bad landing page, then people won't opt in. Right. The next big mistake is a bad reminder sequence. If people opt in, but you're not constantly telling them, hey, 24 hours left, 12 hours left, 3 hours left. Hey, we're going live in 30 minutes. Most people will forget to show up, and they won't be excited to show up. Number 4, bad presentation. If you get people to show up, but your presentation isn't good, they're not going to stick around to the end to hear your offer. Mistake number 5, bad offer, right? If what you're offering either isn't valuable or sounds like what everyone else is doing, they're not going to take you up on it. And then the last mistake is bad follow-up. Half your potential clients from a webinar will register after the webinar is over. So if you have no follow-up in place, you're automatically cutting your potential clients in half. So now, when you do a webinar correctly, they're probably the most low maintenance and highest ROI lead gen strategy possible. Here's why. Number 1, with ads, you can make sure that everyone in your area, in your city, right, knows about your webinar, right? You don't have to rely on word of mouth. That's inconsistent and unpredictable. You don't have to rely on organic social media. Again, when you make a video on social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you don't know who the algorithm is putting it in front of. You don't know if it's people in your area. You're just pretty much hoping. And as we all know, hope isn't a strategy, right? But with ads, you can literally target the most qualified people in your market so that you're not wasting time with tire kickers. And with ads, you can control how many people know about it. So if you don't want a lot of people to know about it, cool, spend less. If you want everyone and their mother to know about it, spend a little more. But you are in complete control of who sees it, how often they see it, when they see it, all with the power of ads. And that means when you host the second webinar, right? Because doing the first webinar, you can get people to sign up. But doing it consistently, that's when you have a system in place. So the second thing that you get when you have a good webinar is with one high converting landing page, you build it once, right? And people start converting like crazy. You don't have to change anything. So for example, the landing page I just created to get you guys registered here, I don't have to use that at all. I don't have to tweak that at all, right? That's just, I built it one time and now it's set, right? The second thing that's cool, good about webinar, or third thing, sorry, is with a solid reminder sequence, right? Same thing. You create it once, and then the only thing you have to change on your reminder sequence is the dates, right? Or the links. So you can have a email sequence built out one time, and then every time you do a new webinar, the only thing you're doing is just changing, the dates, the times, and the links, right? Everything else stays the same. So if you're getting kind of like the pattern here, a lot of the stuff with webinars is you create it once, and that first time creating all that stuff is going to be the most annoying and take the most time. But once you build it out the first time, then you can just keep on reusing it. The fourth good thing about a webinar is with one good presentation, clients feel not only informed, but also empowered. So they want to take the next steps. And you can repeat it over and over again without changes, right? Doing that first webinar to your audience, your current, people that engage with you is going to be good. But then doing the second one, you can't go to the same people. So it's going to force you out of your comfort zone to get new blood into your pipeline. Also, with one good presentation, right, you can keep on using that forever. I taught, for those of you who have attended my AI classes, I taught a framework called the RACE method: role, action, context, expectation, right? That was a framework for writing prompts. I taught that framework originally in 2023. I'm still doing presentations now, keynotes now, teaching that same framework, right? So with a good presentation, you don't have to constantly change it, right? And I'll get into, again, how to create a good presentation. But again, a lot of the work with webinars is front loaded, which is why also keep in mind, when most of the work is front loaded, that means most people won't do it. So if you stick with it, you'll have way less competition. But here's the fifth good thing that comes with webinars. With one good offer, attendees will turn into listing appointments and buyer consultations, right? And the last benefit of a webinar is with good follow-up, attendees who didn't convert on the presentation will convert down the road. And it can all be automated with the tool. I'm going to list out some softwares later down. But yeah, so now here's why webinars work so well, right? When you do them correctly, most agents, they'll do, let's say, again, I'm going to use first-time home buyer seminar or home seller seminar, right? A home seller seminar, that only speaks to about 3% of the market, right? There's something called the larger market formula. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly because I want you guys all to see this, because most agents are only ever talking to, with their marketing, the 3% of the total available market. And once you change your messaging, you won't have to change anything on your landing pages or your presentation. If you just change your messaging, you'll be able to attract way more people to your webinars without doing much more work. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly with you guys, and I'm going to draw this out so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. So really quickly in the chat, let me know if you guys can see my screen. I'm going to share it in 2 seconds. Here we go. Share screen. Here we go. All right. Let me know in the chat right now. Can you see my screen? Let's see. No. Okay, Matt said no. Lisa said no. All right. Give another 2 seconds. So my webinar is a little bit delayed. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, so the screen is sharing. The webinar is a little bit delayed. So my apologies. But it should be live now. Hold on. Here we go. Screen. Canva. Share. Here we go. Now we should be good to go. What's going on here? Yeah, YouTube. Sorry, technical difficulty, guy. Bear with me for 2 seconds. All right. Here we go. Now we should be able to see my screen. Yes, now we see it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, cool. So let's get rid of all this stuff here and get into some of this stuff here. All right, so this is what we call the larger market formula. Let me make this a little bit more. Here we go. This is what we call the larger market formula. Larger market formula. Once you know this is going to help double, triple, quadruple, 100x the amount of leads that you could potentially get. And I know it sounds crazy, but let me break it down for you guys. So you look at this funnel right here, right? This funnel has 4 parts, right? So this right here at the very bottom, this is the 3% of the market that is ready to buy or sell right now, right? So if you put out for example, a message that said, "Hey, sign up for my first time home buyers seminar." If your market has, like, say, a total of 100 people, only 3 of those people are going to be in the market to buy right now, this second. So when most agents do their promoting and their marketing to get people registered, they're only speaking to this 3%, meaning they're leaving out all this good stuff right here. Most people aren't ready to make a move right now, the second. And so if all your marketing only speaks to the 3%, you're going to be competing with all the other agents that are doing the same exact thing. We have a step above that, right? We have the 17% of the market that's currently in info gathering mode, right? Info gathering, meaning they're not ready to make a move right now. Maybe if the right thing comes along, but they're just, maybe watching some classes, maybe reading some articles here and there. Maybe they're signing up for some stuff. They're gathering their information. Now, if you started attracting or speaking to these people in your messaging, now all of a sudden you go from potentially 3% of the people that you're talking to now 20, right? But let's take it a step further. Above this 17%, there's 20% of the market that know they have a problem, right? But they haven't yet started gathering information on it. They know there's a problem there. They know they got to fix something. They just haven't made the time yet to start doing it. So again, if you go from the 3% to now speaking to the people who are just problem aware but haven't started, you're hitting a way larger pool. And then this is the final step, right? 60% of the market right now, that's a total available market, doesn't even know they have a problem. They're not aware that they have a problem at all whatsoever. So if you wanted to, again, get your webinar filled up and stop competing with the 3% that everyone and their mother is competing with, all you have to do is change your messaging just a tiny bit. So John, can you give me an example? Of course, right? This is an example I use actually with Frank, right? So Frank, he's a realtor out of North Carolina, and he's looking for seniors who are looking to retire in Monroe, North Carolina. This is his target audience that we're working with, right? So let's give an example really quickly. If he were to do a home seller seminar, right, and he would say, "Hey, let's see if I can put some text here. Let's see, here we go. And we're going to make this text a little bigger. Here we are. So let's say we had a class, and right, we'd say, "Hey, looking to retire in Monroe, North Carolina, right? Sign up for this home buyer seminar." There we go. North Carolina, sign up for this home buyer seminar, right? So this headline right here is very direct. If you're not someone that's looking to retire in Monroe, North Carolina, you would see this message and you won't even bat an eye at it. You just keep on scrolling, right? This is what most realtors are doing with their messaging, right? They're being super direct, not realizing they're missing out on all this potential people. So how do we get this same exact message, change the messaging so we can attract people in the info gathering stage, right? Very simple, right? We're just going to switch up a couple things. Looking to retire, right? Looking to retire, right? Here's why you should check out Monroe, NC. Again, very minor difference, but it changes our potential market now from 3% to now a total of 20%. So that right there is a 566% increase. And all we just did, again, same seminar, same material, same presentation, same everything, just change the messaging a little bit. But wait, let's say we want to get a little bit more people, right? Let's say we want to get the problem aware people. Boom. All right. Let's see. They're problem aware, but they haven't started looking yet, right? So let's say we wanted to change this up so we can get the problem aware people. So we could say something along the lines of, let's say retirement comes sooner than you think. Here's why you should start planning. Right? Again, we're still targeting seniors. Only a senior is thinking about retirement for the most part. Right? Retirement comes sooner than you think. Right? Here's why you should start planning. Right? So now we're getting people that they know, you know, or this actually right here could probably apply more to the 60%. Right here. Sorry, we're coming up with this on the fly. If we wanted to change this, we could say, hey, I know you've been procrastinating on planning for retirement. Right? Again, so 4 different headlines, but depending on how you word your messaging, you can attract way more potential people. So the difference between this 20% here and the 60% here is right here, I'm specifically calling out the problem. So the problem in this example will be if you've been procrastinating on planning for retirement, right? If you've been procrastinating on planning for retirement, you're going to see this message, right? And boom, right? Versus this one right here, the 60% of people, they're not even aware that they have a problem. Right, so you have to speak to them a little differently, right? Retirement comes sooner than you think. Here's why you should start planning. I can even add a little bit more, some more urgency. Here's why you should start planning now, right? So when you do this, right, and change your messaging, you can go from potentially speaking to only 3% of the market in your area to 100% of the market in your area, right? And here's the cool thing, right? You can't be direct with people who aren't problem aware, right? If someone doesn't know they have a problem and you tell them, hey, are you looking to retire in North Carolina? That message is going to go over their head, right? Versus if you tell someone that's in the 3%, hey, retirement comes sooner than you think. Here's why you should start planning now, right? They're going to agree with that messaging. So you can take a general message and hit the lower markets, but you can't get a direct message and go outbound with that. You can't scale with a direct message, right? So it's very important to, again, when you're doing these webinars, to think of, okay, how can I get the most amount of people? Because in all actuality, if we can get the people before they even get into the market, right, we're going to secure our pipeline, right? While everyone's fighting for the scraps, we're going to have people before they even get into the market. And so that when it's time for them to actually make a transition, whether it's buying, selling, investing, we're going to be the only people they ever think about because we got to them before they got to the market, right? And then everyone's going to try and play catch up and have to try and convince them why they should hire them when they already like, know, and trust you, All right, so we're gonna stop the screen share really quickly. Is that making sense so far? This larger market formula. Let me know in the chat. Is that making sense so far? If you guys, is that clicking? Let's see. Okay, cool. Now here is shout out to Lisa. Here's another reason why webinars work so well, right? The law of reciprocity. So there's a guy named Gary Vee. He has this saying that he's famous for, right? Called jab, 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 hook, right? Or jab, jab, hook. And the whole concept is pretty much is your jabs. That's essentially you giving out value, right? You giving out value, giving out value, giving out value before you make a big ask. And I think one of the biggest problems in real estate is that people don't do, like, there's no courting phase at all. It's like you meet somebody and then within 5 minutes, you're trying to secure a listing appointment or a buyer consultation, right? There's no way to test you out or get to know each other. It's just like, I meet somebody at the bar. Hey, will you marry me? That's how most realtors are coming off. But with a webinar, you get people a way to test you out and also for you to test them out, right? When you use a webinar, right? And you say, hey, I'm doing this free class on Thursday. Would love for you to be there. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to be there. And then they don't show up, right? And they ghost you. Well, then you kind of know, like, hey, maybe, maybe they might not be my type of people, right? Maybe I shouldn't waste effort on them. But let's say they do show up, right, and they're engaged, they're in the comments, they have their camera on, they're like really involved and engaged. Well, then you're like, okay, this is my people. Maybe we can take that next step forward. So doing webinars is a great way to court your clients in a way. Parentheses, right? Don't actually court them. That's unprofessional, but another story for another day. But this gives you time to test them out, see if they're really serious, but also gives them a way to test you out with, no real pressure, right? It's like, hey, I'm doing this free class. Would love to give you some value. If you get value from it, we could talk about next step afterwards, right? And so with the law of reciprocity, right, they say the larger the runway, the bigger the ask you can make. So if you go on for an hour, a couple hours, and you just give as much value as humanly possible, then at the end of it, you say, hey, would love to, meet you at your house to see you, give you a home equity analysis, or hey, I would love to do a listing presentation. I would love to list your property, or whatever your ask is. Let's say you're working with buyers. Hey, I would love to do a free buyer strategy session with you, right? That is going to be a lot of an easier ask after you've overwhelmed them with tons of value versus just meeting them randomly on the street and trying to get them some value and trying to get the appointment. And the third reason why webinars work so well is, again, it's simple and not much changes. A lot of your work is going to be doing that first webinar. And then after you do that first webinar, all you really do is just change the date and do it again, right? You change the date and do it again, change the date and do it again. So all your work is front loaded. And so most agents will think of a webinar and they won't do it because, again, you have to set up the landing page. You have to set up the reminder sequence, the follow-up sequence. You have to, create your slides, right? Again, we're going to be doing all that today. But when you do all that work, then after that, it just kind of just becomes copy and paste, rinse, wash, repeat over and over and over again. Another reason why webinars work so well is if you've ever heard of a mob effect, right? And there's something about mobs or big crowds when people get into crowds and they see everyone doing one thing, they're going to be a lot more likely to do it. So let's say you host a home buyer seminar, right? And you say, hey, I hope you guys get value from this. If you want, comment in the chat, like if you want to get a free consultation, I'll help you plan out how you can buy your first home in the next 12 months. And then you see everyone in the chat saying, oh my goodness, yeah, me, pick me. I want to do I want to buy my first home. I want to buy my dream home. Everyone that's right now that's watching but not engaging, they're going to see all the other people engage, and people have a fear of missing out, right? And so like by doing a webinar and you're getting a bunch of people together, like, oh my goodness, like, everyone's engaged, everyone's involved, like all these people are going crazy for this one person, and they're more likely to, again, adopt that kind of that mob mentality, that herd mentality, and just to kind of just go with everything, right? So that also helps you out with your conversions after a presentation is over. Another reason why webinars work so well is it weeds out the bad leads. Again, I talked about this already. Someone who says they're serious and they don't show up, you can kind of decide like, hey, whether or not you want to spend time with them. So again, a lot of people complain about having bad leads online. Well, when you do a webinar, right, you have multiple filters, right? First filter, right? If you tell someone to sign up and they don't sign up, well, that's on them. Second filter, if they sign up, but they don't show up, right? That's on them. Third filter, if they show up but they don't stick around to the end, right? Fourth filter, if they show up but they don't take you up on your offer, right? And so like you have multiple filters in place to see how ready, how serious someone actually is. And so then you can decide for yourself how much time you want to allocate to that person. Instead of trying to chase all the leads and guess which ones are going to be good and which ones aren't, right? You do your webinar, and again, it's going to filter out people automatically for you, make your life easier. And the people who aren't serious, well, you got their contact information. And so now you can put them on an infinite drip campaign and just keep on providing value until one day they decide, to buy. Now, that is a kind of just, I talked about a lot. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what we covered so far. So I think webinars, again, is the most overlooked, underappreciated lead gen strategy that not too many people are talking about. We talked about the big mistakes, right? So not having bad marketing, having a bad landing page, having a bad follow-up, a bad reminder sequence, having a bad presentation, a bad offer, and a bad follow sequence. Those are the 6 mistakes I see most agents make when they're doing webinars, right? And then the reasons why webinars work so well, again, you can target so many people. They're simple, not much changes. You got the law of reciprocity working on your favor. You have the mob effect working in your favor, and it's automatically weaving out leads for you. So that is all for this video. In the next video, I'm going to be walking you through how to actually create the outline for your presentation step by step. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take this webinar, this full-on day, and I'm going to cut it up into individual videos for my YouTube. But I'm going to take some questions from you guys here now that we're live. So quick questions. What questions do you guys have so far about webinars? Put it in the chat before we get into the next part, which is going to be outlining your presentation. We're going to do a quick, little 2-3 minute, 5-minute Q&A. So let me know in the chat what questions do you guys have so far before we dive into section 2, which is going to be outlining your presentation. What questions you guys got for me so far? Let's see, Jennifer, Lisa, Frank, Matt. Any questions on webinars? No worries. If not, we'll get right into presentation 2. What is the best follow-up registration system? Great question. Great question. What is the best follow-up registration system? So I'll get into this a little bit later. There's a tool called 𝐶𝐸. It's an all-in-one tool to, build your webinars, build the follow-up, build the actual funnel, like the landing page, the registration page, the thank you page, you name it, host the community. That's the tool that I use. It's not a tool that is specific to realtors per se, but and it is a paid tool. The easiest, I think, out of all the tools out there, right, 𝐶𝐸 definitely is the easiest one in terms of user experience. Right, there's a lot of other alternatives like ClickFunnels and Go High Level is another popular one, but a lot of those are very wonky and hard to navigate, especially if you're not a tech person yourself. So I think personally, using something like 𝐶𝐸, because again, it's like an all-in-one tool. It's a CRM, it's a email follow-up, it does your text send-outs, it does all that stuff. So that's the tool. Free option, if you really are on a tight budget with a CRM, the next best alternative probably is Eventbrite. There's just a lot more tedious steps involved, right? So you'll have to manually upload the people from Eventbrite into your CRM. You'll have to manually tag them when you upload them. You have to make sure that you have to make sure that the people are going from Eventbrite into your CRM and stuff. Eventbrite can do the reminder emails, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it might be able to do the follow-up emails. But Eventbrite is a great place to start. Great question. And why am I using YouTube as opposed to Zoom? Honestly, Zoom would be a lot easier to do a webinar, but a big goal of mine is to monetize my YouTube channel, and I need 4,000 watch hours or something like that. And so I'd rather just do it on YouTube. Then I can break all these, I'm going to be covering 6 parts of webinar. I'm covering everything from A to Z. I broke it up into 6 parts today. So when my editor goes back, he's going to cut out all these buffer in between sections, these little QA sections. He's going to edit that out and then take the individual 6 parts, and then I upload them as YouTube videos. But also, as you guys are watching this live stream, my watch hours are going up. So that's why I'm using YouTube as opposed to Zoom. For regular webinars, I would say just use Zoom. I'm literally only doing this because like YouTube is a big priority of mine. But for regular webinars, definitely use Zoom. You can see people's faces. It's a lot easier to engage. Most people, like consumers, are familiar with using something like Zoom or Google Meet, right? Because they probably use it in their day to day at their jobs. So I highly recommend probably sticking with Zoom and don't add the technical pieces that I'm adding. Great questions. What is the best day or time to get a good amount of participants? Should we offer a replay? This is an amazing question, Jennifer. The best day and time is really, it really matters about who's your target audience. So right now we use an example for Frank, right? Frank, he's working with seniors. Seniors may have a lot more flexibility in their day. So he could play around with times versus, let's say you're working with, high net worth young professionals, right? They're probably working a corporate 9 to 5. So you might have to do a 6 o'clock webinar, right? Maybe even a 7 o'clock webinar to give them some extra time to, drive back, make the commute back home, take a shower, settle in, maybe have some dinner. So you might have to do a 7 to 8 webinar or 8 to 9 webinar and be on the later end. Or you might even have to do like a weekend in the evening webinar, right? It really depends on your audience, and knowing who my audience is specifically, that'll then determine, what times work well for you. But again, for consumers, the average person that's working like a 9 to 5, it probably be best not to do a midday webinar like what I'm doing, right? For me, I chose 12 because if I do a webinar any earlier, right, people are gonna be like, oh, but I'm lead genning. And if I do a webinar any later, right, in the early afternoon, people are like, oh, but I have appointments. And if I do a webinar in the evening, people are gonna be like, oh, but I have kids. So like, just know no matter what time you pick, it's like you're always gonna have a certain percentage of the population that say, hey, I can't make that work. I'm a strong believer in people make time for the things they want to make time for. And so pick a time, try to pick the best time that works for the most people, but know that you won't be able to get everybody. And the people that are serious, they're going to make it work. And then the last question is, should we offer a replay? So replays are really important. When you offer a replay, a percentage of people will see that and be like, okay, good, I don't need to attend, right? And so be careful when you're offering a replay. So if you want more people to attend, say, hey, there's no replays, or hey, there's only a replay if you show up live, right? Use the replay as an incentive to get people show up. Because if you just say, hey, we're offering a replay in case you miss it, well, now you're already planting seeds of doubt in their head to miss it, right? So don't do that. Use a replay almost like a tool to get people to show up more. Hey, there's going to be replays, but only if you show up live, right? Now, again, in my case, I'm offering a replay because, again, this is being live streamed directly to YouTube. But that's also, again, a goal of mine is to get more watch time on my YouTube channel, eventually monetize it, get more subscribers and stuff like that. So that's my goal. Great questions. So, all right, these are some really good questions. We're going to get into part 2, which is outlining your presentation. This is a really important part. A lot of people make the big mistake of just like teaching, and that is not the goal of a webinar. So let's get into number 2. I got my notes here with me to keep me on track. We got a lot of material to cover today. So, all right, let's get into part 2 of 6 in this webinar, Ultimate Guide to Webinar series. Take a quick sip of water really quickly. All right, let's get into it. So 99% of agents hosting buyer, seller, or investor seminars or webinars are doing them all wrong. See, the big problem I see is that you're overwhelming your attendees with tons of information, right? You dive into every single step in the transaction, and you assemble the justice league of all your favorite vendors, your lender partner, your attorney, your closer, your home stager, all your favorite vendor partners, and they deliver even more information on top of the information that you delivered, and your attendees are hit with information overload and analysis paralysis, right? Which leads to them staying in the zone of inaction. So in this video, I'm going to help you create your $1 million presentation. We'll cover the top mistakes that are killing your conversions, the 4 levels of value, how to tell stories that sell, how to empower and inspire your attendees, and by the end, you'll have your entire presentation outlined. So let's get into this. So a few years ago, before I got into real estate, actually a lot of years ago, back in 2021, I used to work at a store called �W Jewelers. Now, one of the general managers, district managers, one day he was talking to me, very old school guy, like when you think of a jeweler, he's the type of guy you think of. He wear like very traditional three-piece suits, and like I wouldn't be surprised if he came into work with a monocle. Like that's the type of guy we're talking about right here. Very old school guy. And one day he was like, "Hey John, you have the gift of gab." Now at the time, I don't even think I was 20 years old at the time. I'm just like, what, the gift of what? What is this old guy talking about? He was like, "Yeah, John, you have the gift of gab. You can talk to anyone about anything." And I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. And that was probably the first time I ever been complimented for talking a lot. Normally if you talk a lot, people tell you to shut up. But that kind of kickstarted everything for me. I was like, all right, speaking, communicating, something cool. Fast forward, I ended up getting into real estate. Like I told you in the last part of this video, if you watched it, I taught a webinar around 2022. But a little bit after that, as I was teaching more classes, I signed up for my very first public speaking workshop. And it was there that I realized that there is a difference, right, between talking for talking's sake and delivering a message that impacts, that inspires, that makes people want to move, right, and take action and to get a control of their life. And once I realized that, I was like, man, I got to go all in. And there's a Warren Buffett quote, if I'm not mistaken. It says, the easiest way or the best way, if you want to increase the value of your company by more than 50%, is to become a skilled communicator. And so after watching that, I was like, man, I got to learn everything I can on public speaking and presenting. I ended up getting my hands on this book called Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. It is probably the best book I've ever read in my life, right? There's certain books that, if you watch, that you'll read one time through and that's it. This is the type of book that you want to get and you want to study. You want a notebook aside it, just you can take notes on what you're reading in the book. It's probably one of the best books, again, I've ever read. And it taught me a lot about public speaking and communicating. So I want to start off by sharing the big mistakes about hosting your webinar presentations, right? And the first big mistake I see is great players are not always great coaches and vice versa. What do I mean by that? There is a lot of agents who have sold a lot of homes and done a lot of transactions, and they're good at what they do, but they don't, for whatever reason, think of communication as its own separate skill set. So they think just because they close a lot of deals that that'll automatically transfer over into being a very good presenter. And that's not always the case. In fact, most of the time it's not the case, right? Presenting, it's its own skill set. It's its own art form, right? And so if you are just trying to rely on, if you're just trying to rely on your skills as a realtor, you're always going to be losing in your presentation. And so, again, keep in mind, it's super important to, if you're going to go down this road, that you're going to have to take steps to become a better communicator, right? The same way you scripts and role play practice with partners, right? You want to practice your presentation. Now, the second big mistake I see a lot of people make is information overload. What do I mean by that? I mean just too much information. A lot of people are trying to stuff a book worth of information. They're trying to stuff their entire real estate course into a 60-minute presentation for their buyers and sellers or investors, right? The goal of your webinar is not to tell them every single thing, right? The third big mistake I see is information overwhelm, right? So information overload is too much information. Information overwhelm is complicated information, right? So if you give them a little bit of information, but it's too complicated, they won't get it, right? If you gave them some simple, tips and tricks, but it's too much, again, they'll be overloaded. So you got to make sure that you don't give them too much information, and the information that you are giving them is simple enough for them to understand. Remember, the clients that we're working with, they didn't go to real estate school. The clients that we're working with, they're not closing deals on the regular. They're not in the market studying, inventory and trends and hearing about the interest rates, right? Maybe if you work with some savvy investors and that's your target audience, then maybe that's a different story. But again, most people, you got to be able to, again, simplify it down and not give too much of it, right? The fourth big mistake is most people, they don't have a framework for the presentation. They just think, okay, what are the steps to the home buyer, the home buying process, the home selling process, and just let me talk about each piece a little bit, right? Again, there's a method to the madness when it comes to teaching webinars. And just putting information, even if you put the information in chronological order, that is not a process to create a great presentation. And the last piece, the last mistake is people don't allow for engagement, right? If you're watching this live with me, you know that I'm taking live questions and answering them live. But when you do your webinars, it shouldn't be a one-sided lecture. It should be a conversation. You guys should be feeding off of each other. The more you guys engage, the more I can give back, the more specific questions I can answer, and vice versa. So it's important that if you are going to be doing a webinar or any presentation, that you allow for room naturally for people to engage with you, right? People aren't trying to be lectured at. Most of these people finish school years and years ago, right? They don't want to hop into another classroom, right? Yes, they want to learn, but again, it's important that it's a conversation. So again, to do a quick recap, the 5 big mistakes is, right, you guys either have you don't respect the art of communication. You think that because you're competent in selling houses that you're going to be a competent presenter, right? So that's the first big mistake. Second one is information overload, which is too much information. Third is information overwhelm, which is too complicated information. The fourth is no framework, right? And the fifth is you're not engaging with your audience. So now that we have the mistakes, let's talk about what the goal of a webinar even is in the first place. Again, a lot of people think that the goal of a webinar is to inform, right? And I'm curious here in the chat, let me know, what do you guys think in the chat? What do you guys think is the goal of a webinar? I'm curious to hear what you guys think. What is the goal or your purpose of a webinar presentation? Jennifer says delivery is very important. I agree. And what is the purpose though? What is the purpose? Why, by the end of the webinar, what should someone have be able to walk away with? Is what I'm trying to ask, essentially. Let's see what you guys come up with. While you guys are typing that out, here's what I thought. When I taught my very first webinar, I thought the goal of my webinar was to share kind of how smart I am, right? I thought my goal is like, all right, I'm going to give them every step that I know. This is like my exact A to Z blueprint, right? And when I read that book, Expert Secrets, I was gravely mistaken. I found out that Jennifer says that the goal of a webinar is to inform the participants on a specific topic. Agdi said, decide on the next step, to have confidence in you. All great answers, but all incorrect answers. The goal of a webinar is not to inform or even educate, right? The only goal of a webinar is to instill belief, right? Instill belief. If someone listens to you for hours, but they don't believe what you believe, right? If you do a first-time buyer seminar and in their heart, they don't believe that now is a good time to buy, they will never buy no matter how much information you give them. No matter how many valuable tips, no matter how many tips and tricks and strategies and down payment assistance, same thing for sellers. It doesn't matter. If someone doesn't believe that now is a good time or that they can do it, right, they will never, ever take that next step. So our goal of a webinar isn't to actually inform. It's just to instill the belief. Belief is the lens at which we see the world, right? And if we can change their beliefs to how we believe, then they're going to be more likely to take that next step afterwards. If we can't get them to believe what we believe, then they'll never take action, no matter how much information we try to get them with, right? And a good example of this is, let's say powerlifters. If someone were to say, hey, today I want to become a powerlifter, right? And they believe that in their heart, you wouldn't have to convince them to go to the gym and work out. They would just, on their own doing, just do it. Right? If you said now's a good time to buy, your first home, and they believe that, you wouldn't have to convince them to go buy a home. They're gonna go do it, either with you or somebody else, but they're gonna go, right? If if someone believes that eating pizza is unhealthy and they're trying to get back in shape, it doesn't matter, how many toppings you throw on it, whether you like pineapple or not, or, where it's cooked from. Connecticut is known for having the best, pizza in the country. It doesn't matter where you get the pizza from. If they believe that it's unhealthy and it's going to stop them from their goals, they're not going to do it. So belief is very important. But most people, right, what they do on webinars, they just blab on about, valuable information, things that they think is valuable. but that's not going to change people's belief. So I want to talk about really quickly about how we actually change people's beliefs. Like, how do we get someone to see the world in the way that we're seeing the world? Because if we can't get them to do that, right, they'll never be able to take action that we want them to take. So let's get into a quick little example, right? Let's get into a quick little example, right? So here we are with my screen again. And let me know in the chat really quickly. Can you guys see this? I just want to make sure we're doing good. All right. First time we're getting the screen up. We had some issues, but is the screen up on your end now? Let's see. No. All right. Here we go. How about now? Now we should be good. All right, Jennifer. How about now, Jennifer? We should be good now. Perfect. All right. So if you want to change someone's belief, there's a couple things that you must understand about human psychology in order to do so. Again, because just overwhelming people with information, even if it's quote unquote valuable, is it going to do it? So there's three things that we all have, right? There's three things that we all have. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take them out for you. So the first part, what we have is we all have this little monkey right here, right? Now, this is going to look extremely stupid, but I promise you, you're going to make everything make sense, right? We have an elephant, and then we all have the last and final thing is we all have a lizard, right? So again, at first glance, this looks like some little childish cartoons, but let me break this down for you right here. Because if you don't understand this, it's going to be hard to get someone to believe what you believe. So we all have what's called the monkey brain. The monkey brain is the conscious brain, right? This is the part of the brain that most people think of when determining their action. So a lot of people don't understand that our conscious brain, right? Here we go. Conscious. Here we go. Conscious brain. Our conscious brain, it operates based off of logic and emotion, right? Logic and emotion. And most of the time, a lot of it is emotion and then justified with logic. But our monkey brain only controls about 5% of what we do. Now, the monkey thinks that it controls everything. So the monkey is guiding the elephant. But the elephant is stronger than the monkey. And for anyone that knows about human psychology, we all have this cool thing called the subconscious brain, right? We have the subconscious brain. And the subconscious brain operates based off of stories. So when you're using information to try and overwhelm somebody, you're only speaking to the 5% of them that actually makes decision. When, as you all know, 95% of our decisions are done on pretty much autopilot. And that's why personal development is so important, because if you can't unwire and unpack some of the stuff that you've dealt with earlier in your life, it's going to be almost impossible to try and hit the goals that you're reaching for. So how does this apply to webinars? When you're creating your presentation, right, if you just bombard it with logic and emotion and facts and market stats and all this very logical information, right, the conscious brain will try to act on it, but the elephant is going to guide him every single time. Your subconscious brain is going to guide you. Now, how do you tell stories, right? When you're telling a story, right, it has to be a story that pretty much overrides the story that they're currently telling themselves. So if someone thinks right now is not a great time to buy, right, there's a reason why. Maybe they've seen a neighbor that tried to buy, and that neighbor put an offer in on 20 houses, and they lost every single offer. They got outbid, and the properties all went. So now they're thinking, okay, my neighbor tried, he put in offers, and he got outbid. So now it's very competitive. I don't think it's a good time to buy because it's competitive. And so that's the kind of the story that they're telling themselves. I can't buy because it's too competitive. I can't buy because it's too competitive. So if we want to share a story in our presentation, our story has to, one, point out that we understand what their story is, and then show them why that story isn't actually serving them and what the real truth is. But you can't do that by stuffing market facts. You have to share a story. That's why they always sell facts, tell, stories, sell. And then the last piece of this, right? The last piece of this, we call this the lizard brain, right? The lizard brain. That is your amygdala. That's the part of the brain that deals with fight or flight response, right? So usually, I'm going to say fear, right? Usually, when someone tries to do something out of their comfort zone, right? If their subconscious doesn't redirect them, once they get too close to it, their lizard brain, their amygdala, is going to redirect them. So let's say, you want to start working out, right? And you've always been insecure. But one day you finally decide to go to the gym, right? And you're about to get in your car. That little voice in the back of your head is like, you shouldn't be working out. You're already too far gone. You're already too out of shape. That's your lizard brain speaking to you, trying to talk you out of your goals. So if you're ever trying to strive for more and you hear that little voice on your shoulder, right, trying to tell you all the reasons why you can't do it and all the reasons why you shouldn't do it or won't be able to do it, right? That is your lizard brain talking. So when you're creating a presentation, right, you have to think, okay, what are the stories that my ideal audience is dealing with, right? And why they're dealing with them? Because as I outline my presentation, I want to make sure that my presentation hits all these different points. Because if it can do that, then at the end of my presentation, when it's time to talk about next steps and how they can move forward, they're going to be a lot more likely to do so, right? So again, this is why telling stories is super duper important. So let's stop this screen share, go back to the actual presentation. Let's now you have the kind of base understanding of everything that we need to know, right? Let's actually start creating the presentation outline, right? So there's quite a few steps. So if you have your notebooks, this is where, again, I want you to take out your notebooks and make sure you're sticking with me. But here is the first step to making your $1 million presentation. The first step is, who are you making the presentation for? If you can't answer that clearly, then you don't have any business yet creating a presentation. Now, when I ask, who are you making it for? I don't mean like, oh, this is a buyer seminar. No. Okay, what kind of buyer? Is it first-time buyer? Is it move-up buyers? Is it vacation buyers, right? Is it forever home buyers? Is it right-size buyers, right? What kind of buyers are you looking to help? Let's say you want to help, second-time buyers, right? Well, second-time buyers are going to be dealing with a unique set of problems and circumstances that you can speak to directly with your presentation. For example, a lot of times where people are buying a second home, it's because they most likely are living in their primary residence and they own that, and they're looking to get more space. Maybe they had an increase in family size. Maybe they had a promotion at a job. Maybe they had a family member that's moving in with them, right? Depending on your audience, when you know crystal clear who you want to help, it's going to help put guardrails on what you actually put into your presentation. For example, let's say I want to work with, again, second-time buyers. I'm not going to really talk about, home buying 101. They already gone through the basics. So I know I can leave that information out. Or let's say I'm working with a seller, right? Let's say I'm working with a I'm working with a senior that's looking to, move into forever home, right? Let's say they've been in their home for 20 plus years. Well, they probably have a lot of memories in that house, right? A lot of little artifacts, a lot of little photo books and scrapbooks, and maybe they have a bunch of stuff that they've stored over the years that is kind of overwhelming, right? Well, now you know that maybe adding a declutterer to your presentation or a part of your presentation about decluttering might be important. Again, so it's super important to figure out who you're making your presentation for, because if not, then it's going to be very hard to figure out, okay, what do I leave in? What do I take out? Once you're clear on who you're making the presentation for, you have to write down your big domino. What do I mean by big domino? Your big domino is your core belief, your one core belief, right? So let's say right now, let's say we're working with first-time home buyers. The one core belief, the big domino that I need to get them to believe by the end of the presentation is that now is a great time to buy. Now is a great time to become a homeowner. If they don't believe that core belief, then nothing else that you try to tell them will land, right? No amount of information, no amount of objection handling will ever get them to land if they don't believe that one core thing. So after you get your core audience, right, the one core belief is like, okay, I'm working with first-time buyers. I need them to believe that now is a great time to be, not only a great time, now is the best time to become a homeowner, right? Right now, if I'm going to use this webinar as an example, right? My target audience is real estate agents. There are a couple people that aren't real estate agents, which is totally fine. But the core thing is I need to get you guys to believe that webinars is the best way to start generating leads online. If I can get you guys to believe that, then you guys will be more likely to actually host your first webinar, right? So what's that one core belief, right? If you try to get people to believe two things or more, your conversion rates are going to plummet through the basement, right? So I'm not trying to convince you guys to do webinars and YouTube. I'm not trying to convince you guys to do webinars and social media. I'm not trying to convince you guys to do webinars and open houses, right? I'm just trying to convince you for today's purposes only to do webinars. When you do your seminar or webinar, right, you have to get them to believe that now is a great time to be a homeowner, and that's it. Not you should be a homeowner and think about investing, right? Not you should be selling your home and thinking about, buying a vacation property, right? And using the equity to buy a vacation home. Like, if there's more than one thing that you're trying to get across, your message won't land as well. So a good way to kind of like write this out, right, is the only way to get X is through Y, and the best way to get Y is through my Z. So let me give you an example. The only way to become a homeowner, right, is to start leveraging down payment assistance in 2026. And the best way to know which down payment assistance programs to use is to attend my free homebuyer masterclass or homebuyer webinar, right? This is a great way to kind of like, again, write out what that core idea is so you can, again, have it something a little bit more templatized, right? The only way to get X is through Y, and the best way to get Y is through Z. Right? Another example could be, right, the only way to grow your business is through social media, and the best way to use social media is through my 5-day challenge, right? That could be another example, right? Once you have that big domino, the next thing that you need to do is you have to answer the 4 core questions. The 4 core questions. What are the 4 core questions? These are the questions and doubts that every consumer, every attendee will have when watching your presentation, right? The first one is why you? Like, why should the attendee be listening to anything that you have to say? Why should they be taking your advice versus all the other people that they could potentially be listening to? The second question that your presentation must answer is why this? Why is this thing that you're telling me important? Why should I do this thing? Right? Why should I buy a home? Why should I sell my home? Why should I get an investment property? Why should I do webinars? Right? They're going to be asking why this. And so you have to prove to them and show them like, hey, this is something that would be beneficial for them and help them get to their goals. The next question they're going to have is why me? Right? Right? Why can I do this? Right? Why, for example, let's say Lisa's doing a webinar. The first question they're going to have is, why should I listen to Lisa? The second question they're going to have is maybe, why should I buy a home? The third question is, why can I buy a home? Am I even able to buy a home? Like, can I really do this? Is this a possibility for me? They're going to have internal limiting beliefs about the thing that you're trying to teach them, right? Or the thing that you're trying to get them to believe. And then the final question that they're going to have is why them? Why them? This question is more so, let's say someone thinks that Lisa's a great real estate agent, right? And then they think that, okay, buying a home is a great thing to do. And they think, all right, I can do it. The last question they're going to have is, but I don't know, I think the market is gonna drop. I think home prices are gonna drop back down, right? I don't think my wife is gonna let me be on board with this, or I don't want to move my family, right? I don't want to uproot them from the school system, right? The external limiting beliefs are the things that they point outside of themselves, right? So everyone's gonna have these four core questions that you need to answer in your presentation, whether it's a 30-minute, a 60-minute, an hour, 2 hours, 5 days, you name it. But if you can't answer these four core questions during your presentation, they will not move forward, right? Even if they believe, right, what you want them to believe, these four core things, these four core questions are gonna be holding them back from taking action. So you got to make sure you answer them. So, right, so far we got who you're making this presentation for, what's the big domino, what are the four core questions, and the next step is what are the four core stories, right? What are the four core stories? So this part is super important because again, they're gonna have four questions: why you, why this, why me, why them. If you try to answer those four core questions with just logic and information, they're never going to break the belief that's holding them back in the first place. So you need four core stories to answer each core question. So I'm going to share my screen again really quickly, and we're going to get into that piece because, again, this is where we start getting into like a little bit of a storytelling masterclass. So I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. Here we go. Share my screen. Alrighty, we got my big elephant. A big old elephant and my monkey and my lizard brain. Right. Boom. Alrighty. So let's get into this over here. Boom. I'm going to make this font a little bigger. So we have four core stories as we're making our presentation, right? Four core stories. Boom. Story number one is going to be your origin story. Your origin story. Now, this part of your presentation, let's say we're going for about 60 minutes. Let's say we're doing a 1-hour masterclass about whatever the topic you want to be. This part of your presentation is only going to be about 10 minutes long, right? And the goal of your origin story is very, very simple. The goal is to, one, let people know the big domino, right? Let people know the big domino, right? So it might be that now is the best time to get into home ownership, right? This is important because if people don't know why they're tuning in to your web class, right? Or if you're not reminding them, then they're going to be more likely to tune out. One of my biggest pet peeves when I see speakers is when speakers are presenting and you're just kind of listening. Lisa, thank you for letting me know. One of my biggest pet peeves is when speakers are presenting and they're just the whole time you're listening and you're just like, when are they going to get to the point? So you want to start off your presentation by getting to the point. Hey, you guys are here, and the goal of this presentation is to let you know everything we need to know to buy your first home in the next 12 months. Boom. We're gonna let you know everything you need to do to sell your home for top dollar in the next 6 months. So you want to make sure in the first 10 minutes that you are letting people know, like, hey, this is what we're here for. And the second part is answer the question, why you? Right? How do you answer the question of why you? Share the story that that made you believe what you believe. So let's say you think now is the best time to get into home ownership. Share the story of why that is. Don't let people know the stats about, homeowners are 80% wealthier than renters on average. Homeowners gain equity at this thing. There's never been a 20-year period where homeowners have lost money. Like, that's all great and all, but if you're giving them information and not stories, it won't change what they believe. So share the story that made you believe what you believe, right? A lot of realtors have this problem, and it's called technobabble, right? If you've never heard of the phrase, it's from a book. I forget the author, but the book pretty much is titled, If Your Offer is So Good or Your Product is So Good, How come nobody's buying? And in that book, she talks about this thing called technobabble. And technobabble is when you ask somebody about what they do or why they're so passionate about it. When they start spewing out all the information, all the facts, all the stats, all the the all the information that they can pull, all the quotes, you name it. But those facts and stuff like that usually aren't the thing that made you believe what you believe. For a lot of realtors, right? A lot of times when real estate agents get into real estate, right, it's because they had a bad experience with a realtor prior, right? Right? Or they saw how, owning a home has changed their family's life, right? And so in that origin story, you don't have to even necessarily use a story about your professional experience. You could use a personal story. Like let's say you're working with first-time home buyers, you can use a story of when you bought that first home, right? What was that like for you? How were you able to navigate, right? You want to get people to have the epiphany that you had. Like, when did you start believing that home ownership is the best vehicle to build wealth? When did you start believing that, selling your home, right, in this specific way could get you the best results? When did you start believing that, right? If you can get people if you can share that story, then people can start seeing why you're so passionate about it. And then you sprinkle in the little nuggets here and there. Like, you sprinkle in, like, a nugget or two about credibility, right? You don't have to list all your acronyms at the end of your business card, right? Just a couple things. Hey, we sold 50 homes in the last 2 years, right? We sell a home a week. We help first-time buyers. We specialize in down payment assistance program. Like, share a couple little nuggets in there about your credibility, but no more, right? Again, at this point in time, the people that are attending, they still don't really care about you all that much. They care about their end goal, which is buying a home or selling a home or investing in a property, right? That's the reason why they showed up. They didn't show up to fangirl over you. So again, just really quick, sprinkle those in. Hey, I've been able to generate, I've been able to help 100 family in the last 2 years get to their first home, right? And then keep the presentation flowing along, right? Boom, nice, quick. Once you finish your origin story, the next part of your presentation is your vehicle story, right? 10 minutes. So this is going to be, again, 10 minutes. And the goal of this vehicle story is to highlight a misconception or false belief, right, about the topic. Break it, and then replace it. That's it. So what do I mean? So again, let's say you're working with first-time home buyers, right? Your origin story is you kind of sharing, hey, when you bought that first home and how that changed your life, right? The vehicle story could be about home ownership. So once they think, okay, Lisa's a great agent, oh, well, I don't know about home ownership. I hear a lot of things about how homeowners get screwed and how homeowners are spending so much more money in taxes and this and that, right? So you have to really quickly highlight a quick misconception or false belief about home ownership, break it by sharing a story, right? And then replace it with a new belief that they should have. By, again, if you're working with first-time home buyers, by the end of this second 10-minute segment, they should believe that, one, you're a great agent, right? That's what the origin story does. And two, home ownership is a great vehicle for them, right? Let's say someone's overall goal is to build wealth. Well, they could do home ownership, right? They could do investing in stocks. They could do investing in index funds. They could do starting a business. They could, they could become an angel investor and gift out money, right? They could become a scammer. These are all different vehicles to get them to their end goal, which is why, again, if you remember, step number one is who are you making this presentation for? When you know who the presentation is for, you know what their end goal is, right? And so you have to, in this second 10-minute segment here, show them that this vehicle that you're teaching, that you're giving them information on, is the best vehicle to get them to that end goal that they desire, right? So if you do this part correctly, right, now they'll have the answer to why you, right? You'll share a good story, right? You'll give them a little bit of credibility, and you'll let them know what the presentation is about. Then you share, again, you highlight that false belief, right? Break it, replace it. Now they understand, all right, homeownership is the right vehicle. The next 10-minute segment is what I call the internal belief story, right? And again, this is going to be, if you guess 10 minutes, you are correct, right? And in this internal belief story, you're pretty much doing the same exact thing that you did before, right? You're highlighting a misconception or false belief, this time about themselves. So if you're doing this presentation so far, right, they think Lisa's great, they think home ownership is great, but there's some misconception or false belief that they think that's stopping them from thinking that it's something for them. So even though they like you, they like the idea of home ownership, there's something in their heart or in the back of their mind that's like, all right, that's great and all, but I don't think I could do this. I don't think I can be a homeowner, right? Let's say you're working with an immigrant household, right? Maybe they come from a household of renters. And so you're not just helping them become a homeowner, you're helping them break out of this generational curse of renting. But if you're not aware of that, right, you're just going to stuff more information and, completely miss the thing that's actually holding them back. So you have to figure out, okay, what are the internal limiting beliefs that they have that are holding them back from getting that dream outcome, that dream result, buying that first home, right sizing finally, right? Getting that first investment property, getting that first multifamily, whatever the webinar topic is about, right? There's something that they believe about themselves that's holding them back. And once you finish that part, the final part is the external belief story. And if you guessed 10 minutes, you are correct. And you're doing the same exact things here, right? In this part, you're highlighting a misconception or false belief, not about the topic, not about themselves, but about the external thing, right? So what do I mean by external thing? So if you're doing this presentation properly, right, the first 10 minutes gets them to like you, right? I think Lisa's great. The next 10 minutes get them to believe that the topic is great for them. So I think Lisa's great. I think homeownership is great. The third 10 minutes is to get them to believe that they can do it. So, right, Lisa's great. Homeownership is great. I know I can become a homeowner. But I heard the market sucks. Or my friend told me I shouldn't do it. Or my uncle said I should just wait. Right? There's something or someone that is holding them back outside of themselves. And if you don't break this last piece here, then you'll never be able to get them to take action. Right? There has to be nothing in their way. And so when you create your presentation, when you outline your presentation in the way we have it here, if you haven't noticed it already, your presentation is just a one-to-many objection handler. So instead of you scripts and role-playing just one-on-one, you can't do that when you're creating a presentation, right? Let's say you have 20 people. If you went one by one and answered everyone's concerns and things like that, you'll never get to the end of your presentation, right? So you have to kind of think about what are all the limiting beliefs, what are all the misconceptions. You have to think about that all in advance so that when you're crafting your presentation, you're very subtly and smoothly breaking any concern that they may have. So that after this, when we get into the last part of the presentation, right, they're going to actually take you up on their offer. There's a saying, an objection is just a question that you didn't answer in your presentation that you let fester. And now it got infected. Right? So if you can answer any questions or misconceptions before they actually arrive, before they're presented to you, then when it's time to pitch, a lot more people will take you up on that pitch. And so again, After you do this, right, the vehicle story, the internal belief story, external belief story, you're going to be about 40 minutes into your presentation. And this is when you get into your offer stack. This is going to be roughly about 20 minutes. So this is a little different. In your offer stack, right, your goal, you have a couple, right? The first goal is for ask for permission. Before you transition to pitching them or selling them, right, or asking for the appointment, you want to ask for permission. If you don't do this, it's going to be a very, very awkward, weird transition where it's like, oh my goodness, I'm getting so much value. And then, oh, are they selling me? Right. So you don't want that to happen, because then that's when trust breaks. That's when, the law of reciprocity stops working. Right. So you want to ask for permission before you present whatever it is that you're offering. Right. The next, after you ask for permission, you're going to say something along the lines of, hey, is it okay if I share something with you guys that I've put together over the next 10 minutes or so? They're going to say yes, right? And if they say no, you can always spin it off like, okay, no worries. Listen, hey, if you guys don't want this stuff, I'll just help my other clients who want to buy a home or sell a home or whatever, right? And you make a little joke out of it, and then you're back in the door, right? After you ask for permission, then you're going to present your new opportunity. Again, this is a bit of a mindset a shift, a reframe, or if you want to call it that. You're not selling them on something. You're presenting a opportunity for them to take the next steps, right? So this part of your presentation isn't, back in the day, this would be like a really hard sell. And I think a lot of people, it kind of just like eroded the trust of hopping on webinars online, especially in the business to business space. But the offer stack isn't supposed to be a super hard sell when you're trying to close people. It's supposed to be a showcase of this new opportunity. Hey, you stuck with me so far for 40 minutes. Hopefully you've been getting a ton of value. Now, again, obviously, I can't change your life. I can't help you buy a home in 40 minutes, right? So I put together a really special thing for you guys. Here's what it's called, right? I'm doing my, home buyer strategy sessions, and here's what's involved, right? If you'd like to take me up on this opportunity, here's how you could do so. If not, no worries. I promise to continue delivering value until your time is ready. Right? This offer portion of your presentation isn't supposed to be a hard sell at all. It's supposed to be, again, just presenting your new opportunity. Once you have this, right, this is pretty much your webinar in a nutshell, right? You have your origin story, your vehicle story, the internal belief story, external belief story, offer stack, right? They get to know you and why they should work with you. They get to know why they should believe in the topic, right? They get over any false beliefs that's holding themselves back. You overcome any objections that may have of external things holding them back. And then you present the next step and then say like, hey, ball's in your court. What would you like to do, right? This is pretty much what Russell Brunson calls in that book, Expert Secrets, your perfect webinar, your $1 million presentation, whatever you want to call it. Right, this is your exact outline. So I know that was a lot of stuff, Frere, but I'm gonna do a live little mini demo. Right, we're gonna create a live webinar right now, but I need someone in the chat to help me out. So who wants to be my first victim for the day so far? We still got 12 of you guys here in the live stream with me. Who wants me to help them create their presentation here live? Lisa put a question mark. Okay, Lisa, you commented first. I'm going to ask you a question. Who is your target audience? Let me know in the chat. Who is your target audience, Lisa? Once you let me know that, then we're going to create this presentation live here in front of everybody. Because I feel like getting the presentation started is probably the hardest part. So we're just going to start off with that. All right. Downsizers. Okay, perfect. Right. So now we're going to do a presentation for downsizers, right? So, right. Audience downsizers. Right. Now, if we remember, step number 2 is what is the one thing that we need them to believe, right? So one thing that we need downsizers to believe, I'm assuming, I'm gonna make a lot of assumptions just so we can keep it going because the live stream is a little delayed, right? The big domino, you can downsize your home without losing all your precious memories, right? I think one of the big things that hold people back, especially downsizers, right? They're probably downsizing for maybe kids left at home. Maybe they need something more accessible. Maybe they need something that is just smaller to keep up with, right? So not cleaning, spending days trying to clean the house and all that stuff. Um, Maybe they just need to get something closer to family, right? And they'd rather not spend all their money on a brand new house, right? There's a lot of reasons that we have to kind of assume, but we're going to kind of go over this presentation live. So my origin story, so let's get into the actual presentation, right? So Lisa, really quickly, have you ever downsized your home? Right. Let me know in the chat, Lisa, have you ever downsized your home? Okay, perfect. This makes my life so much easier, right? So, right, boom. Origin story, right? I'm going in here, right? And I'm sharing the story of, I'm starting off my presentation with a quick little joke about downsizing, right? Just to kind of ease the presentation into it. I'll do a quick little joke. I think that kind of opens up the mood, right? Then we're going to get right into, right? Goal for today is, if you've been thinking about, let's say thinking about moving into a smaller home, right? I'm going to walk you through step by step or something, right? That's going to be my goal. And then I get into my story, right? Story is going to be me downsizing, right? My first time. Boom. And when you share your story, Lisa, there's a process to storytelling that you kind of want to follow. The first process is backstory, right? So what's the backstory, right? Where were you at? What was going on in your life at that time period, right? When you were about to start the downsizing process, before you actually started it, like what was going on in life, right? Again, you don't have to share all your personal information or personal details, but as much as you're comfortable sharing, you share that quick little backstory, right? And then you're gonna share what we call the new opportunity, right? Before you even thought about downsizing, opportunity. What was the thing that made you start thinking about downsizing, right? So your backstory, kind of sharing like the context, you're setting the scene a little bit, right? Then the new opportunity, right? That's when the first initial thought came into your head, right? Backstory, new opportunity. After you do that, you're gonna share the journey you went on. All right, the journey. What was the journey that you went on to downsize your first home, right? Then you're gonna finish off. Oh, we're not finished off. Then you're gonna get into the epiphany that you had, and then the achievement and transformation. So this is kind of like a quick and dirty framework for telling stories that always works. So I'm gonna do a fake example here for us live, Lisa, just so we can kind of get into everything. But you gave me some information. You moved between states and downsized, and husband transferred. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna pretend I'm Lisa. I'm gonna do a made up story based on what you just gave me, right? So if I'm starting this presentation, I'm like, hey, they always say that it's so fun being an empty nester because you finally get to have some peace and quiet. I don't know, insert random joke, right? yada yada. And I feel like sometimes that's true, but sometimes I miss my grandkids. Or I miss my kids. I can't lie. I love seeing them grow up, and my house had so many memories. But let's get into today's presentation. Today we're gonna be talking about if you ever been thinking about moving into a smaller home. I'm gonna walk you through how to do that step by step without losing out on all your precious memories, right? I hear a lot of people that are just kind of scared to move out of their home because they think they're tearing behind whatever is left of the family that they once had, and that's not the case at all. So let me actually share with you my story of how I downsized for the first time. See, it was back in early 2000s, right? Right before the dot-com burst. Life was great and everything was going well. This is before I was a real estate agent, and I remember at the time I was, working a job and getting by. My husband, he was maybe being the breadwinner or whatever, and he had a nice corporate job. And I remember around this time period, about a year prior, the kids finally moved out, and so we've been just me and my husband for the past year. And I remember he got a call from work saying they want to move him to Georgia. Now, keep in mind, we live in Connecticut, so like that was a cross the country hike. I've never been to Georgia before in my life. I remember getting that call, and he sat me down. We talked things through, like what would life look like? We're leaving everything here for this job, and I remember having to figure out like what are we gonna take, what are we gonna do, and I remember I had to call up so many realtors, and I ended up finding a really good one, and they kind of helped me figure out the moving process, and they actually had connections in Connecticut that walked through my house and kind of helped me get everything organized, and we ended up realizing like there's this thing called decluttering, and people will come help kind of clean up my mess. And I have my garage filled with stuff from the kids that we've never looked through for years. And they kind of came through and just helped me do everything and put everything away nicely. And that's when I realized, like, you know, I didn't lose any of my memories. We could take them with us. And long story short, like long story short, we ended up moving down to Georgia. We had a great realtor, and that made the process super amazing. But more importantly, the house we were living at prior, it was just too much. And like now where we have a nice little town home. It's nice. We're in a great community, right? They always do activities over at for the neighborhood, and it's nice to be in a spot where I don't have to clean 3,000 square feet, every single week. Boom. Right. And that's the intro to your presentation. So if I were you, Lisa, that will be pretty much, my intro. And then I'll say something along the lines is like, and that's kind of what I want to help you guys with today. Right. So in this presentation, I'm going to be helping you guys with blank, blank, and blank. Right. And so that's kind of how the beginning, again, I can't do a whole presentation right now. That'll take forever. But that's how the presentation kind of flows when you get into it. Right. The beginning is nice. You're easing into it. You're not like stuffing any information into the throat. You're kind of, again, your goal is to share that big domino. What are they going to get from you, right? Why should they listen to you, right? And get them to resonate and relate with you. So does that make sense, Lisa, if you're still with me? All right, cool. Cool, cool, cool. So again, that is pretty much how you outline your presentation. Once you have the outline, the next question is, well, John, how on earth do I actually create the slide? So that is exactly what we're going to cover in the next video. If you stuck around to the end, make sure to click here. And in the next video, I'm going to walk you through step by step the entire slide deck that you can use when you create your first presentation. Boom. All right. So for those of you watching the live stream, this is where we take our next break before we get into part 3. Again, we have a long, long day today. So feel free to ask away. What questions do you have before we hop into the next portion of today's training? Feel free to let me know in the chat for those who are still here. See, what question do you guys have? And while you guys are asking questions in the chat, I'm going to get some water really quick. How long is the presentation? Okay, let me get some water. All right, how long is the presentation? Diane, great question. There is no set limit or minimum to your presentation, right? Now, depending on how much time you do want to do it, that'll then change the portions, right? So, with your presentation, right? Again, I outlined it for 60 minutes. If you're doing 60 minutes, you want to spend 10 minutes for each of the core stories. So 10 minutes for your origin story, 10 minutes for your vehicle story, 10 minutes for your internal belief story, 10 minutes for your external belief story, and then your presentation, right? You want to do 20 minutes, right? And so your offer presentation portion, you want it to be double the length of the story part. So let's say you're doing a 90-minute presentation. Then your 4 core stories will be 15 minutes each, and then your offer part of your presentation will be 30 minutes. And so as long as you keep those proportions, it doesn't really matter the length of time that you do your presentation. People will continue to stick with you. But again, assuming you're talking to consumers, if you do a presentation, let's say in the evening, right, and you do a 2-hour presentation, that may be a lot tougher to stick with or sit through. So again, it's important to kind of know your audience, Diane, but great question. I like to keep it at 60 minutes. 60 minutes, you can commit an hour, right? Most people have an hour lunch break, or sometimes they have an hour lunch break. So, or they have an hour in the evening, right? Next question. How do you keep engagement? Do you use Q&A or polls? Great question. I like to keep engagement by one, starting off the presentation is very important. This is something I do before the presentation even starts and I open up my slides. It's always easy to say, hey, where you're tuning in from, right? Hey, put your name in the chat, put fire emoji in the chat. This kind of like test the waters to know what kind of crowd you're dealing with. Sometimes you do a webinar and you get a crowd that's not engaging. No one has their camera on. And I'm not going to lie to you, that is probably the toughest crowd because it feels like you're just talking to nobody, right? So test the waters before you start your screen share and share your slides. And that'll let you know whether you have an audience that engage. And also, don't be afraid to rock the boat a little bit, right? If I go into a webinar and I see that everyone's camera's off, I'm going to say something along the line, hey, like, sheesh, I didn't know I was going to be talking to myself today, right? Or, hey, if I knew no one's going to show their face, I would have just, I would have just canceled the presentation or something like that. You don't have to be so direct and blunt, but feel free to call it out. And usually that level of directness will then make people want to share their screen or share their camera or engage in the comments. And then from there, in your presentation, this is a very, very high level but subtle like thing to do. It's called trial closes. So trial closes is pretty much you asking questions to get a yes out of your audience throughout the presentation. So like you can be like, hey, you guys getting this? Hey, did that make sense? Hey, you guys find this valuable? Hey, you like that one, right? Or hey, wasn't that a great tip? And so you kind of ask these questions that are kind of like rhetorical questions, but this will get people to, whether they say yes in the chat or not, like subconsciously, they're going to be responding like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Or, yeah, that was pretty valuable. And so like you're asking questions to kind of like their subconscious to kind of throughout the presentation and get people, I forget what it's called, but studies show that if you can get someone to say yes once and get them in a process of saying yes, then they are more likely to say, continue saying yes. But yeah, great. Diana said, great. When does this presentation end? I'm not going to lie, Diane. I got my entire Monday afternoon blocked. I was going to record these as individual videos, and I figured why not just do it all in one sitting? And if people could stick around for the whole thing, then perfect. If they can't, no worries. Again, I'm going to turn this entire thing into 6 individual videos to be on my YouTube and be a little bit easier to consume. Great question. I just don't want to miss it, but I have to take the dogs out. All right, cool. So with that being said, let's get any last minute questions. If not, we're going to get right into the actual part of part 3, which is me creating the slide deck with you guys. All righty. I don't see any questions in here. Right. So we're going to go through. And we're going to just get this next part of the presentation going. All right. I got like 20 pages of notes that I got to get through, so I apologize for all the flipping. All right, let's see. All right, I got it here. So let's get right into part 3 of today's presentation. So, what if you could walk into a room of 100 people and close everyone? See, the big problem is that a lot of agents suffer from is that all of their role play and sales calls and trainings and scripts are made for one-on-one. But one-on-one selling doesn't always scale when you're presenting one-to-many. And although the skills of closing on one-to-one or one-to-many, right, are very similar, they're applied very differently. And so I'm going to walk you guys through really quickly, right, how to create your presentation, because if you don't have a good slide deck, people won't watch it. So I'm gonna get right into in this video, I'm gonna walk through the 7 deadly sins of slide decks, I like to call it, and walk you through the exact template that I use to create my presentation that I got from a billionaire. So the sin number 1, the first big sin for a presentation is having a bad title, right? The first thing that people see when your presentation is put up is your title slide, right? Your title slide should help grab their attention. It should pique their curiosity. It should share the benefit of what they'll get from the presentation and eliminate any potential objections of why they should watch, right? If you have a bad title on your slide deck to kick things off, then you won't be able to get their attention at the start. No worries, Lisa. I'm not screen sharing right now. Thanks for the heads up. Sin number 2 is having slides that are too wordy, right? Your slides are meant to support and complement your presentation, not to be read off of. A lot of people like putting a book's worth of information on each individual slide, and then people stop paying attention to you and you're trying to read everything off the screen. So if you have wordy slides, that is a big no-no. The third big sin of presentations is too much branding. Right, your slide deck doesn't have to be super branded, right? You're the person presenting, they see you, right? You're the brand. So that is the most important part. Once you start adding all these fancy colors and color schemes and fonts and all that stuff, there is an art to branding that, again, I'm not trying to knock, but again, the whole purpose of your presentation isn't to show them how well branded you are. It's, again, plant that belief that'll get them to take action. And most of the time, simple actually is better than complex. Right? Also, if you're not a graphic designer, simple will make your life easier, because you're not either going to A, have to figure out how to create all the fancy designs yourself, and B, you're not going to have to hire somebody on Fiverr. So you're saving time and money if you just keep things simple with your presentation. Right? I like to think of when you're creating your slide deck, pretty much all my slides are just a white background and then black text. Nothing fancy at all. All right. Sin number 4 is too much animations or transitions in your slides. The reason why transitions and animations are helpful is because it kind of changes things up a little bit. So again, if you have a simple presentation, having a little transition here and there will just add a little pop to it and make sure that people are still watching. But most of the time, especially people that are newer to presenting, they'll forget that there's animations and transitions in their presentation. And then when they use a clicker to try to click next, right, the slides won't change immediately. And that'll throw them off rhythm. And then they'll start getting in their own head, and then they'll forget what they need to be said. And so having too much animations can hurt you, because then you have to remember where you embedded all those animations in your presentation, which could be a lot. Sin number 5 is bad quality images. If your images are low resolution or they're blurry, it defeats the whole purpose of having images. And on top of that, it's going to distract the audience, because they're just going to be looking at how pixelated the images are. Why can't they make out what the image is looking like? And then the 6th sin is bad font, right? Either trying to get too fancy with the font and use like some, cursive or script font that no one can read, or your font is too small. Remember, sometimes the people that are going to be tuning into your webinars are going to be watching from their phones, not their laptops, or maybe an iPad, right? So you have to use fonts that are very easy to read, and make sure that the font is big enough so even on a mobile device they can be read. Because if not, again, then people won't be able to keep along with your presentation. And then the final sin of slide decks, and I was kind of debating whether or not I should even put this one because it's not really like too bad of a thing, but nevertheless, I think it's um, having slides with too much, and again, this kind of goes alongside with branding, but too many colorful words, right? Sometimes use colorful words like green when you want people to take action, or red when you want people to like pay attention. But again, too much of that is again not necessary. I like to keep things simple: white background, black text. So now that we got the common mistakes of slide decks, right? Let's actually walk through step by step what a slide deck looked like. Is that okay if I share with you my exact template for you guys to follow along? Right there, I don't know if you guys noticed, that is an embedded command. So I mentioned earlier with Lisa, like how do you get people to engage? Asking questions that you know people will say yes to will kind of keep them like, of course, I want you to share my slide deck. All right, with that being said, let's actually get into the slide deck. I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and we're going to open up this presentation. So let me share my screen. Here we go. Share screen. Here we are. Live streaming. All right, Lisa, you've been my rock star all day today. So, Lisa, can you see my screen? Let me know if you can see the screen before I keep it going. And if no, okay. All right. How about all right, let me stop the screen share really quick. Oh, yes, it was up. Okay, cool. All right, good. We're good. So here is my exact slide deck template. Now, this took me forever to put together because I got this and had to take a lot of. I paid for this template, and then I had to take off the original owner's branding so I could share with you guys because I don't want to get copyrighted or sued or anything like that. So the first part of your presentation, I'm gonna be walking through this step by step, right? The first part of your presentation is the title slide. So usually for your title slide, right, a easy framework to use is how to blank in less than blank without blank. So how to insert goal or desired outcome and less than insert time period without most common objection. So let's say you're doing with downsizers, how to downsize your how to downsize your home in less than 3 months without sacrificing all your memories with your family. Let's say you're working with buyers. It's how to buy your first home, how to become a homeowner, right? In less than 12 months without spending tens of thousands for a down payment, or without saving tens of thousands for a down payment, right? So this is a nice, easy framework to kind of follow for your presentation. After you get into that, right, the next part is this is like your little intro or rapport section, right? So you can just share a quick story, a quick joke. This is something kind of start testing the waters a little bit, start getting the audience involved and engaged, right? Usually when I start off my webinars, I either start off by just getting right into my story of like how I got into like teaching AI and social media, or I'll use a little quick story saying, hey, back 20 years ago, the market was different. Everything was done by hand, and everything was either through a yellow book or white pages or a newspaper. Then during the pandemic, everything changed. People started going online on social media, and the way buyers and sellers started finding agents started becoming on TikTok and YouTube and all the different platforms. And then fast forward to ChatGPT, that kind of kickstarted this whole AI trend. And now we're in a day and age where people are asking the AI platforms, who's the best realtor in town, right? So that's usually the story that I kind of start off with. And again, it's not a major story, but it's just a quick story to kind of get the idea across. Like, hey, times is changing, and there's something that we need to do about it. So again, this could be different depending on who your audience is, but that's usually what I do. Once we get into that, right, then we get into the new opportunity, right? Who is this for, right? So for those of you who are brand new to AI, right? For those of you who are brand new to webinars, right? This is going to show you everything you need to know from A to Z to host your very first webinar, right? And for those of you who are, you know, experienced with doing webinars, this is going to help you get more conversions, get more people attended, and yada, 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 right? Who is this for section? Right here, you can do one of two things, right? You can make it be like all inclusive, where it's like, oh, this is for everybody. If you've been thinking about trying to sell your house, like if you've, you know, are thinking about selling your home, right? This is going to show you step by step. If you've never thought of selling your home, this is going to share why you should maybe consider it this year, right? If you've never bought a home before, this is going to show you how to buy your first home, right? If you have bought a home before, this is going to show you how to buy your next one without spending as much as you did in the first one, right? Or you can say, who is this for? This is not for you if you're not a homeowner, right? This is not for you if you're looking to buy a home in the next week or so. Like this is a process, whatever. So you can either use this portion right here to either push away people that you don't want in your presentation, or to get people into your presentation, like to get them more engaged and call them out. So I usually do the second route. I usually say, hey, if you've never done this, then you'll get this result. And if you have done this, you'll get even better results. So that way it kind of includes everybody in the presentation. There is no right or wrong way, just whatever way you decide is best for you and your business at this season of life. Once you tell it who the presentation is for, right, then you're going to get into the big domino. So I mentioned earlier about the big domino, right? It's kind of like this, right? The only way for you to downsize is through, the only way to downsize is through, let's say, um, I'll use buying. The only way for you to become a homeowner is through using buying a home. And the only way to buy a home without breaking the bank is to use this special down payment assistance program, right? Bit of an easier example. If I would do a web class for this presentation today, it would be the only way for you to get leads online is through webinars. And the only way to do webinars is through my proven webinar process, course, framework, whatever, right? So this is just a way to state your big domino so people know, okay, what are we here for, right? What is the goal? Why are we spending the next 60 minutes with you? This is where you put that in, right? After that, right, quick little, again, just a quick little nugget or two, right, of why you are qualified. Why should people be paying attention to you? They're about to spend 60 minutes of their life, right? Why should they listen to whatever has to come out of your mouth? Let them know really quickly, but then don't make it a brag about me show, right? Hey, I've worked with 100, family, 100 families in the past 2 years. I've closed, 5 deals a month. Hey, I've been licensed 30 years. I've seen every market. Hey, whatever it is, throw in your quick nuggets and then get right into the most important part, which is the origin story. Right. So in your origin story, this is going to kind of walk you through the steps. So, right, your first part, what gives you your backstory what's a backstory that gives us a vested interest in your journey, right? And as you're sharing your story, I made it easy for you guys. All you have to do is just answer these questions, right? Why should someone care about my backstory? One, well, maybe I was exactly in their shoes not too long ago, or because I thought there was no way out, right? Or whatever it may be. Then keep it going, right? What is it that you want to accomplish, right? So for Lisa, it was downsizing with, right? But you're moving across states. So there's probably some concerns, some fears or worries that you probably had, Lisa, when you were making that move across states, right? This is where you share that, right? And then from there, what was the problem or the wall that you hit? Maybe there's a hiccup that you had along the way. Share that, right? What was the epiphany you experienced, right? And the new opportunity that you discovered? What was the plan that you created to achieve this desire? Like, what was the steps that you had to go through to actually make it happen, right? What conflict did you experience along the way? Hey, We had to deal with, you know, the movers and all these things and all these people, right? What was the end result that you achieved? And what was the transformation you experienced? So the end result is, hey, we downsized successfully. The transformation is I found my forever home and now I'm, you know, able to, you know, live a life that's peaceful or something. I'm not sure what the transformation was, but you get the kind of example. These questions, you don't have to answer every single one of them, but they're meant to kind of give your story a flow, right? If you just answer these questions on each slide, it will give your story a flow, right? Once you finish sharing your story, right? This is where we kind of get into, all right, after doing that, all that stuff, I kind of discovered the hard way of downsizing, right? Right. And then this is where you kind of liken them to your story. So, right, you share, hey, if you've been struggling then with, you know, downsizing, right, or moving out of your home, right, or getting that first home, this is probably why. There's a saying, people will do anything for someone that can um, alleviate their fears, encourage their dreams. What's the saying? I should have had this written down in my notes. I don't have it written down. But pretty much in here, you want to start highlighting all the reasons why someone is probably struggling, right? The reason why you want to highlight the reasons why someone is struggling is because that's going to then get them to understand that you understand, right? They'll know that you not only are this expert that has information, but you also know what they're going through. If you can point out that you know what they're going through, then they're going to also assume that because you know what they're going through without them mentioning it to you, that you also probably have the solution to said problems. So in here, again, you just want to start highlighting all the different reasons why someone might have been struggling. So if I were going to do a example for this, hey, maybe you've been struggling with getting leads online, and it's probably why, and this is probably why, you know, you're posting content on social media, hoping it catches the algorithm. You maybe hired an agency in the past saying that they were going to do all your social media and get you leads, whatever. Maybe you paid for Zillow leads or Realtor.com leads, and those leads came in, they were horrible quality. Or maybe you even, you know, went to your broker thinking that your broker would provide leads for you, and after a while, they kind of just all dried up. Like, this is where you highlight all the reasons why someone's struggling. After you do that, right, then you kind of share, okay, the hard way, right? This is what we've been forced to do. So in the past, you know, let's say if you wanted to buy a home, you had to first you had to go on a newspaper, right? You had to look up realtors, then you had to start calling people, then you had to potentially interview with some of them, and all of them they're gonna have to tell you the same pitch, and you have to sort you through it. You list out all the step-by-step process, right? Because right after this, then you're gonna say, hey, you know, I'm gonna help you do this live in the next 60 minutes. So you're gonna list out all the process, all the steps in the process, of like let's say buying a home or downsizing, and then you're gonna present your way as kind of like the easy way, right? I'm gonna show you how to do downsize your property without going through all that mess live in the next 40 minutes. Who want to do that, right? Instead of hiring an agency and, you know, creating content and buying equipment and all that stuff, I'm gonna show you how to get 50 to 100 leads a month, every month, live in the next 45 minutes, right? Who wants that, right? So you kind of do a little bit of a contrast here. You share all the steps in the hard way, so that when you talk about, hey, what you're gonna teach them, you kind of pitch that as the easy way. So people are gonna be a lot more likely to listen to you. What this is called throwing stones at the alternative, right? You're throwing stones at the alternative, right? All the other vehicles, all the other ways someone can get their end result, you have to throw stones at them so that they believe your route is not only the route that can get them there, but it's the best route and the only route that can get them there, right? So instead of it becoming a option, it becomes the option when you do this. Once from here, right, then we're going to transition into your 3 secrets, aka your 3 steps, or aka whatever you're going to cover, right? The guy I learned this from, Russell Brunson, he likes to use secrets, so I always use secrets. It's mainly because like it's a curiosity play, like what are the secrets? But you don't have to use secrets. You can say the 3 steps or 3 this. It also doesn't have to be 3, right? You can have 5, you can have 4, you can have 3. I think 3 is the perfect number. That way, again, you're not trying to make stuff up, or you're not trying to break the presentation outline that we created earlier. So it could be your 3 steps, your 3 secrets, your 3 tips, your 3 strategies, whatever. But keeping it in threes, it makes it easier, one, for you to get through the material. It makes it easier for the audience to retain the material, right? And also it's way less slides and stuff that you have to create. So here's where you share the 3 things that you're going to cover. At this part of the presentation, assuming we're following the outline and created in the last part, you should be about 10 minutes in by the time you get to this part. By the time you get here, we're then going to transition into secret number 1, right? Secret number 1. So once we get to this stage, right, we're going to share what we're going to cover. Hey, we're going to cover how to blah, 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 right? And then we're going to share a story. So an epiphany bridge is pretty much just a story following the framework I showed you guys earlier, with all the questions in part 1, right? All these questions here, this is like the epiphany bridge story. So let's get back into secret number 1. So again, like I mentioned in part 2 of the video of this series, we have 3 things, right? We have the monkey, the elephant, and the lizard brain. So the monkey has a belief in himself. I mean, the elephant has a story that he's telling himself, right? And this story, this false belief, if we don't break it, they won't ever take us up on our offer, right? So we have to state what that is to let them know that, hey, we know what's holding you back, right? And then from there, once we do that, then we share a story, right, of how you can actually take that belief, break that belief, and then replace that belief, right? So we're gonna say, so let's say someone wanted to downsize their home. They think downsizing is something they want to do. So the steps to downsize their home, well, first things first, we're gonna get a declutterer, right? And after we get the declutterer, we're gonna see, what things need to be taken and what things can't be taken, right? Or what things shouldn't be taken. We're gonna make a list for you, right? And go into all the things so that you know what memories are coming with you, right? We're gonna get everything organized, nice and neat, and packed away, and then blah 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 blah, right? And then you're gonna share pretty much what it costs you to learn all of that stuff, right? What investment did you have to make to learn this thing? So again, it's super important here in this part of the presentation that you don't get super granular with the tactics, right? You're kind of teaching very high level. Again, the goal of the presentation is not to inform them on every single step. You only have 60 minutes, right? You're informing them on like the high level steps, right? So for example, what do I mean by high level steps versus like the granular steps? If we were to talk about buying a home, right? The steps pretty much in a nutshell are, find a realtor, get pre-approval, see some houses, put an offer in, boom, get it clear to close. That is, again, a super simplified version of how to buy your first home. If we want to get more granular, we can go over every single detail. But again, you won't have time for that in a webinar. And if you try to put that into a webinar, you're going to do one of the gravest sins that I mentioned back in part 1 of the series, which is information overload, right? Don't overload your audience with information, right? You want to give them a high level strategy. Okay, that you just need them to start understanding the concept of what the process would look like. You don't need them to understand every step in the process. That's for you to know because you are the professional guiding them, right? Once you kind of get into, again, sharing the steps, then you could start sharing some case studies. So let's say you're working with people downsizing. So Lisa, you could share a quick story here. Listen, I helped Sally. Sally was in the same shoes of all you guys watching this webinar. Sally, she was thinking that she wanted to potentially move out. She had an empty nest, but she didn't want to let go of all the memories. And we kind of walked her through this process, and here's how it kind of went along for her. And then you share a story of how you helped somebody else, right? And then you can start sharing here. Again, this slide is not a super important slide. This is a slide to let people know, like, hey, who this works for. Like, if you already have an emptiness, maybe if you have a messy house, maybe if you don't have anything packed yet, maybe if you don't know where to start, right? This will work for you. If this is my presentation and I was talking about webinars, I'll say who this works for. This works for new agents, right? This works for experienced agents. This works for agents for admin. This works for rainmakers. This works for LOs. This works for you name it. And I can start naming people so that everyone feels like it's for them, right? Remember, when you're teaching a presentation, there's so many different people that are going to be on. You don't know where everyone's starting point is. And so you want to try and call and highlight as many people that this will help benefit so that everyone feels like, okay, this is for me. This could help me. Because if not, again, let's say someone's starting at step 1 of the process and someone's already on step 4, one of them is going to feel like, hey, this is maybe too advanced for me, or hey, maybe this is not advanced enough for where I'm at, right? And so you want to make sure you highlight the potential people that this could help, right? So boom, now we have that. Then we're going to get into break the related beliefs. Is there anything else that's holding them back, right? You want to make sure you do everything you can to resolve any other questions really quick. Again, you don't have much time, but let's say you're, again, with Lisa, you're doing downsizing, right? You want to resolve any questions or false beliefs here that they might have about downsizing specifically, right? And you're just going to answer them really quickly, kind of like rapid fire. From there, you're going to restate the new belief as an undeniable truth. So now that you broke down, right, their misconceptions and false belief about downsizing, you're going to let them know, hey, downsizing is for you, and this is secret number 1, blah, 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 right? Hey, webinars is the best way to get leads, right? Blah, 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 blah. And so that's kind of like the process or secret number 1. Now, the rest of this kind of gets a little repetitive, if I'm being honest with you. Right. If I'm being honest with you, this gets kind of repetitive, so I'm going to fly through all of it. Secret number 2, you're pretty much going to do the same exact thing, right? With secret number 2, you're going to state the secret, you're going to share your story, right? Tell them the story, blah, 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 right? Share kind of like the old ways that you used to do it, right? Share a new and better way, right? Which is your process. If you don't have like a process, like, I would say 1, create your process, but then 2, give it your name, like a name. Naming something makes it sound proprietary, makes it sound, and it makes people a lot more likely to take you up on it because it sounds like something actually official, right? And then from there, this will be your, whatever your proprietary thing. This is my, my proprietary downsizing blueprint, right? This is my first time home buyer boot camper, whatever it is, but make sure that your process has a name so that, again, it sounds more official. After that, again, another case study / testimonial, blah, 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 blah. Boom, secret number 2, right? Then for secret number 3, again, this gets pretty repetitive, so I apologize, but you're kind of going to do the same thing. You're going to state the secret, right? Share your epiphany bridge, right? Share the misconception or false belief. Share the story. Go through your steps, right? Share a case study or testimonial. Break the belief patterns, right? And then you're going to do a quick recap. So I kind of flew through that because, again, it is a bit repetitive. But after you do all that, if you follow the presentation outline that we covered, so 10 minutes each part, you'll be right now at the 40-minute segment of your presentation. Once you get to this slide here, this is where a lot of conversions die, because this is where you can go from, this is where you go from teaching and inspiring and educating to presenting your opportunity. And again, if you don't transition well, you're going to hurt, one, your trust, the rapport that was built during that presentation, and you're going to hurt your conversions. So once you get to this final portion here, right, you're going to just do a quick recap of everything that you covered because you want to make sure that they remember. Then you're going to transition into the selling part. So what you do here is you're going to ask them a question. Hey, do you think if I follow this process that I laid out for you today, then that you can get this result? Right? So if we're working with Lisa, right, if I follow these three secrets to downsizing, do you think that then you can downsize successfully without giving up all your memories? Right? You're going to set up this question in a way where you're kind of getting a yes. Hopefully the stuff that you actually taught was valuable, Because if it was, then this should be an easy yes, right? If I follow John's process to doing webinars, do I think that then I could do it myself? Yeah. Okay, cool. So then you go into the big question. This is probably the most important question of your presentation, right? You're going to pretty much ask, in a nutshell, hey, I put something together for you, right? I put something together for you, and I would love if I can spend the next 5, 10, 15, 20 or so minutes going over with you. Is that okay? Would you guys mind? That's how you transition to selling without feeling salesy. That's how you transition to selling without blindsiding your audience and making them feel like, oh my goodness, what on earth did I sign up for? I did not want to be part of a pitch fest, right? So the $1,000,000 question is, in a nutshell, hey, I put something together. Do you mind if I go over it, right? And you could say like, hey, I put something together for y'all, for you guys, right? So they know it's not just something random. Hey, I put something together for you guys. Do you mind if I go over it? Boom. Once they say yes, and this is one of those questions where you want to actually ask the audience in the chat, like respond back, like, do you guys mind, right? And once they do respond back, that's when you then present whatever your offer is. Now, I'm going to get into in another part of this series how to actually create your offer. But again, I wanted to go over this really quickly because once you know this, then all this stuff is going to be kind of like plug and play. But again, so once you share with them, so hey, here's what you're going to get, my downsizing boot camp, whatever, right? You're going to get, right? Boom. Part 1 is my downsizing ebook, right? Then you share a quick story about why you created it. Now, when you get to this part, a lot of people, they're going to try and list out all the features of their thing, right? And, oh, in this ebook, right, it is a great ebook. It has all the information. It has all of this. It has this, right? You're not sharing all that details, right? You're going to lose all your conversions if you do that. You're just going to share the story about why you created it, right? I created this ebook because I know a lot of people, downsizing could be very tough to navigate. And so I put together all the best resources. Boom. Right. Here's what you're going to get, right? You're going to get blah, 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 blah. Right. Here's a couple of case studies. I had Joe Schmo. He got the ebook and, he said this about it. I got Sally Sue. She got the ebook and she said this about it. I got, Larry Lou, and Larry he loved it. He said blah, 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 blah. Right. Some quick testimonials. Right. Who does the ebook work for? Right. This works for everybody. Right. Downsizing is something that we'll all have to consider at one point in our life. Right. So even if you're, have downsized once, but you're downsizing again, maybe you need something with more accessibility. Maybe you need a home closer to your family. Like no matter where you're at in your journey, like this is for you, right? From there, right? Oh, but if you're not thinking of downsizing anytime soon, no worry. We got the guide on how to prepare yourself 5, 10, 15 years before you start downsizing, right? So here, like this whole part right here, you're just kind of explaining what that could be. Again, now your offer could vary, right? And in a nutshell, again, I'll break this down in my next part of the series, but what an offer essentially is just like almost like a instead of just saying, hey, I would love to have a listing appointment, right? You kind of like compartmentalize what you do, right? So let's say at the listing appointment, let's say you go over pricing. Let's say you go over a marketing plan. Let's say you go over competitors. Let's say you go over a neighborhood open house strategy, right? Those are 5 things that you're going to do regardless, right? You can just compartmentalize that and say, hey, here's what you're going to get. You're going to get a free 30-minute, home selling strategy session. You're going to get a market analysis. You're going to get a competitor cheat sheet to see what other homes in the area are selling for, right? So instead of just saying, hey, schedule a listing appointment, it's like, hey, no, I have this things. And it's things that you would have done already. But now, since that you compartmentalize it, now it sounds a lot more valuable to the person you're offering it to, right? And then you're going to get into stack slide number 1, right? Here's what you're going to get so far, right? Blah, 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 total value of blank, right? but you're going to need something else. What else do you need? You're going to need a blah, blah, blah. What's the next thing that they're also going to need, right? Your offer is pretty much the thing that is going to get them the result that they're looking for, right? So now that you got your home strategy session, you're going to need, now that you got your ebook, you're going to need the home strategy session, right? You're going to share a quick story about why you created it, what they'll be able to get from it, right? What they'll be able to get rid of in case they can get rid of things, right? And how it's helped you really quickly, how much time and money it'll save them, any misconceptions, all right? Boom. So now you're going to get part one of this. All right, mic check, mic check. We are back on the live, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. All right, Lisa, are you here with me still, or did you leave me? Let's see who's with me still. Going about 2.5 hours in. Who's still here with me? We got 4 people. Okay, cool. So we still got people watching. So let's get right into the presentation because this show must continue. Here we go. All righty. All right, we should be up and live again. I'm here. Molly, appreciate you, Molly. Molly, are you here? Oh, sorry, not are you here? Can you see my screen? Let me see if you can see my screen. If you can see my screen, Molly, please let me know. Can you see my... Okay, cool, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Let's get right on with the presentation. Again, so once you get to this part here, right, then you're going to ask them a very important question. So if you've noticed, right, so far we haven't yet revealed what the price is, right? We haven't yet revealed what the price is. We're just stacking the value. Now, we need them to believe that the stuff that we're offering is actually worth that much, right? If, for example, Molly, you're here with me. If I gave you $1, every time you gave me $1, you probably wouldn't accept that trade, even though you're not losing anything. The reason why is we only like giving up our money if we expect the thing that we're getting in return to be worth more than the money we gave up, right? So if Molly gives me $1 and I gave her $2, now she's gonna be like, okay, this is a good deal. Why? Because now she feels like she's getting a steal on this offer, right? She's getting the some benefit from this offer. So if you're gonna present something before you reveal the price, you have to make sure you stack the value and they understand that what they're getting actually is valuable. And the numbers that you see, like you want to make sure that those aren't arbitrary numbers. Like you want to make sure that's real hard costs associated. For example, let's say you charge $500 per hour for your time and you're offering a free, 1 hour strategy session and you put the value of $500. That is real value right there, right? And so when you're doing that, that's when you want to make sure again the numbers aren't arbitrary. Then you get into if all statements, right? This right here is super important. So you're going to pretty much ask them 3 questions, right? If all this did was finally get you closer to your goal, right? Would this be worth it, right? If all this did was finally help you downsize into your forever home, would this be worth it? If all this did was give you a proven process to ease all the stress and overwhelm, would this be worth it? You want to ask 3 questions that you know the answer is going to be yes, right? Based off of the offer that you're presenting, right? Because again, if you can say that it's worth it, let's say the total value is, $5,000 for the stuff that you're offering, right? And they think it's worth $5,000. Then in the future, when you reveal the price and it's only, let's say, $500, it's like, oh my goodness, this is a deal, right? So once you ask these 3 questions, then you're gonna say, I had 2 choices. I could either, first option was to, be cheap and, not put everything together, just offer you guys a free consultation and call it a day. That's what pretty much every other realtor in the market does. They just offer free consultations, right? Or I could do the second option, and you're always gonna paint the second option as the better option. Or I could do the second option and take a little bit more time or put a little bit more stuff together to give you a more holistic approach or to give you a more holistic A to Z foolproof solution, bulletproof guide, whatever it may be, right? And then you're going to say, I took the second option. So your first option is pretty much like the lazy route. Your second option is the more difficult route for you, but more beneficial route for them. And so you're going to say, I took the second option. And then you're going to ask them, again, what would this result be for you, right? What would downsizing to your forever home be worth to you, right? Again, these are just some examples, right? You don't have to put a quantifiable number, right? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But again, you're just kind of you're trying to get them to figure like, okay, how much is this actually worth to me, right? Let's say downsizing, right? Let's say it's worth, all their memories. That's priceless, right? They can't put a price on that, right? To have someone help ease all the process, whatever. Let's say buying a first home, right? To have someone help you go from renting to home ownership and start building wealth, something you could pass down to your kids, right? That's priceless. Again, so sometimes you can add a quantifiable number to it. Sometimes you can't, but you want to get them to start thinking like, what would this mean to me? Like, what would this mean for my life? What would getting this result actually do for me, right? Then from there, you kind of show them like, hey, this isn't a cost, but an investment. And then you reveal your price, right? You can say, hey, you can see why this is a good deal at, let's say, $5,000 of value, right? And for the general public, eventually I'm going to charge $1,000. But because you guys are all special, you guys can get started now today for this amount, right? Now, again, if your goal from your list, your webinar is to just book consultations, right? You can just stack all that value and say you guys can get started now for free, right? So now they're getting all this stuff that they said they would pay money for, right? They said if they could get them XYZ result, it'll all be worth it. And then you tell them, hey, you can do all this just for free. Now, again, depending on what your offer is, and if it is something free, you don't have to go to this extent to kind of like sell it. But again, if you're going to sell something, go all out. Like, don't like half in, half out with it, because then that's going to kill your conversions, right? And also make sure that the stuff that you're presenting is stuff you actually think would genuinely help them and contribute to getting the result, not just extra stuff to arbitrarily fluff up the value. You know what I mean? But once you reveal the price, right, then you kind of get into, now you have 2 choices. You can either A, do nothing with this information and take this and try to figure it out on your own, or take this and keep on procrastinating, or take this and, wait for the perfect time. Or B, you could take this leap of faith and, book this consultation and, work with me for XYZ, right? And we even have a guarantee. Hey, if I can't help you downsize your home in the first 12 months, I will personally pay your closing costs, right? If I can't help you buy your first home in the next 12 months, I will personally help you. I will personally buy down your rate 1%, right? Or it could be something entirely different. The whole point of a guarantee is to kind of risk reversal, right? To let them know, like, if you decide to take action with me today, there's nothing that you're gonna lose from this, right? I'm back, I can back what I'm offering. That's how confident I am. Right now, there's a couple of different guarantees, and I'm not going to get into every single guarantee, but you can have an unconditional guarantee. So like, hey, if I can't get you your first home in the next 6 months, right? I'm going to, for if you at any point in the process, if you're working with me, for whatever reason you don't like my service, you don't want to work with me, just say, hey, Lisa, I want out, and I'll cancel your contract, and we don't have to work together ever again, right? Or you can have like a conditional guarantee. It's like, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, and you think still that I'm not the agent for you, right? Then you can cancel anytime. So unconditional and conditional, the only difference is with the conditional, there's some sort of like steps that they have to do in order to qualify for the guarantee. Right? You can also do no guarantee. Hey, I'm so confident that I can help you get that first home or help you downsize your home, right? That there is no guarantee. I've done this 1,000 times. I could do this in my sleep. That's how confident I am, right? And I'm only gonna work with you as you're serious because I'm serious. I'm all in, right? Or something like that, right? So or you can do an implied guarantee, right? Which is pretty much like, hey, you get my blah 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 guarantee where I only get paid if we close a deal, which is how real estate agents work anyways. But you can use that as a leverage point, right? Hey, I call it my no satisfaction, my 100% satisfaction guarantee. Like, hey, if I can't help you close a deal, right, then I don't get paid or something like that. But again, those are a couple of different guarantees. I don't have all the time to get into that, but just so you guys kind of get an idea. After you can do your guarantee, you kind of ask them is the real question is, if you take action today, like, do you think that this could actually help you? If you actually follow the stuff we talked about today, do you really think it could help you? Because if so, right, you're going to get all this amazing stuff, right? And for anyone that books a call, for the first 10 people that book an appointment, for the first 5 people that book a consultation, for the first 10 people that book their strategy session, I'm going to give you your extra amazing bonus, right? All for blah, blah, blah today. And again, it could be free. Now, this final slide here, there's a lot going on. In the top left corner, right, you have your value, all the stuff that they're going to get. So they remember. You have a little bit of a countdown timer going, right? You got the countdown timer going. The countdown timer, really, the only thing is there for is just to add some more urgency. There's some people that will attend your webinar, and if you don't give them a reason to do it right now, they will not. And it's not because they don't want to or they don't like you or they're not qualified. Just some people just need that extra kick in their butt to take that next step. So add a countdown timer to that last slide. When the countdown timer finishes and hits 0, you just log off, right? You don't have to cancel the offer or close the offer. Just kind of like, hey, I'm just gonna be here for the next 30 minutes answering as many questions as I can, right? And then the questions, right? The questions, you don't want it to be like a free-for-all Q&A. Ideally, you have some questions pre-prepped, and then you answer the main questions, and by questions, I mean main objections that people have. Answer them before they become actual objections. So answer all the things like, what are the steps in the process? What things do you have in place to make sure to get the result? All those questions, you can have them pre-prepped and pre-written, and then you should start spitfiring them. And then after you answer each question, you pretty much then give them the call to action. Hey, book your consultation. Okay. Oh, but what if my house is messy? Oh, well, if your house is messy, we have declutterers that are trained to help you out. We have people for that. Make sure you book a consultation. Oh, but yada. And so every time someone asks you a question, you're just kind of like pretty much going back into the pushing them back to the call to action for as long as the countdown timer goes. Well, now I know this has been a super lengthy video, but now that you have this kind of template to follow, you have pretty much everything that you need to create your $1 million presentation. But again, the next thing that we're going to need is to create your offer, right? And I should have actually did that first, but we haven't. So in the next part of the video, we're going to create your offer so that when it comes time to actually create this presentation, you have stuff to put in the slides. So that being said, I'll see you in the next video. Alrighty. Now it's time for some Q&A. Who is still with me? What questions do you have about the webinar, like the slide deck part of the presentation? Let me know in the chat, for those of you who are still with me, what questions do you have about the slide deck? Let's see. Let me put this in the chat. What questions do you have about the slide deck? Just put that in the chat. Is this the same that you do for every webinar/webinar series? So this YouTube live stream, I didn't create this as if it were a webinar. I created this as if it were 6 individual YouTube videos that kind of went from start to finish. I was going to record them individually, but I was like, you know what? Probably a better idea to just bang it out all in one session. I am now realizing that as my voice starts to fade, this probably wasn't the best idea, but the show must go on. For webinars, though, yes, that's pretty much the same process I follow for pretty much every single webinar that I've created for the past like 4 years. Every single time. Now, sometimes depending on when I'm giving the webinar, I'll go through the full like offer stack at the end of it. Or let's say I get invited to speak, I'll just give that presentation, and instead of doing that whole offer stack, I'll have like a QR code. Now, the cool thing with QR codes is most people, what they do with QR codes is they'll have the QR code at the very end of the presentation, and then they get this awkward position where it's like they're bringing their presentation to a close, and then they finish the presentation and everyone kind of gives them a round of applause, but then they're like, oh, but scan this QR code and you'll get blah, 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 blah. I like to put my QR codes, if I can't like do a full-on pitch like I just showed you guys at the end there, I like to put my QR codes at the somewhere in the middle. I like to think of it as the point of most value. So like whenever you're sharing your juiciest nugget, your best secret, your best tip, whatever, like that's when I would say like, hey, and if you guys want this, just scan this QR code or whatever. But that's only if, again, I'm giving the webinar somewhere other than on a webinar. Like let's say I take my presentation and I go speak somewhere in person, then I'll change that up. But aside from that, that is the only time that that's the only time where I'm switching up the presentation. If I'm just doing a regular webinar, I'm following this slide deck. Great question, Molly. All right, what other questions do we have? Let's see. Lisa says it was very clear. Yeah, this one is a little more cut and dry. There's not like too many different concepts that you probably never heard of before. Just follow the template. Copy and paste. All right, we'll give it another couple seconds for any questions. Coming in once, please ask me some questions. It gives me some time to let my voice soothe a little bit before the next portion, but let's see. Going once. Going twice. All right, I'm going to stall a little bit more. Lisa and Molly, what was the most valuable thing so far? You guys been with me for like the past 3 hours. We've been hanging out here on YouTube. What's been the most valuable thing so far before we get into the next presentation or next portion? Do I find that 60 minutes is the best? Um, I find that 60 minutes is the most time effective. It's the easiest sell, right? Hey, I'm doing a 60-minute class, right? An hour, it's easy. That's an easy block of time for someone to fit into their schedule. So that's why I like it. The original like webinar framework that I learned was 90-minute presentation. Um, the reason why I like 60-minute too is because when you get, well, at least when I get invited to speak, I'm usually talking for 60 minutes or less. So I'd rather have a solid 60-minute presentation that I could use as a webinar or use as an in-person speaking, speech than a 90-minute presentation. Because trying to take 90 minutes and condense it down into 60 or 45 is tough. But, right, if I have a 60-minute presentation, well then if I can do my full presentation, I can give my 4 core stories, then I can do my pitch. Let's say I can't pitch, then I can do my 4 core stories and do some Q&A. And so I like to structure it as like 60 minutes. It's easy for people to block off in their calendar. It's easy for me to block off in my calendar, right? And so, yeah, so that's a good question. I like 60 minutes. But there's people who have, again, because most of the time, like, most agents are just looking for a consultation, right? And with the consultation, like, again, you don't need to go so super crazy to, like, book a consultation. But you can make it short, like say a 30-minute masterclass, right? And then if they want more information, book the consultation. But all right, cool. Okay, so the 4 core stories is so far what people are enjoying. All right, that's good to know. Well, let's get into the next part of the presentation. I'm gonna take a quick little deep breath, and then we're gonna get right into it. Give me 1 second. All righty. Let's see. All right, we're still going. We're still good. All right, cool. So let's get into the next part of the presentation. Most agents, when they're giving an offer, they're just offering a consultation or a free strategy session. And that is a good first step, but it's not an offer so good that people feel stupid saying no to, or what Alex Hormozi calls a grand slam offer. And so I think a lot of agents are missing out on potential clients because the offers that they're making aren't compelling enough for the people to want to take action. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through pretty much how to create your $1 million pitch so that you can close clients without feeling salesy or use any hardcore pressure tactics. So one of the biggest mistakes I'm going to start off with when agents make when they're selling or presenting an offer is that they're using an unclear call to action, right? You see a lot of agents on social media and like you look at their offer and it's like, hey, if you want to, book an appointment, give me a call, shoot me a text, email me, or send me a DM, right? There's too many different call to actions going on there. Do I call? Do I email? Do I send a text? Right? People are suffering from what I call decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is pretty much every day we're making thousands and thousands and thousands of micro decisions, right? And so they're just saying, right, you want to eat the frog in the morning, right? Or do the most difficult or most challenging or the thing that takes the most bandwidth in the morning, because that's when you have the most willpower. By the end of the day, people are already drained. They have to make all these decisions, getting ready for work, going to work, at work, coming home from work, right? And by the end of the day, like by the time they see your stuff, now you're giving them even more options for things to do. So when you're giving a call to action, you want to make sure that it's as crystal clear as possible, right? And the second big mistake I see a lot of agents make is that they don't have an offer. What do I mean by that? They just have a product or service. And most time with agents, they just have a service, right? What is your service? Hey, I'll help you buy a home. That's it, right? Oh, hey, if you want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, give me a call, right? That is pretty much the templated pitch that every single agent make when they're trying to get an appointment, right? Well, hey, if you're thinking of buying or selling, give me a call. If you're looking for a real estate agent, give me a call, right? That is not an offer. That is just a service. And the thing that sucks about offering a service or a product is that you get commoditized. And when you get commoditized, people are always going to price shop you. And they're always going to ask for someone. This is more towards the listing agents who are offering a commission. But when you're commoditized, people are always going to look for the person that could do it cheaper. Now, some people may want the premium option and are only going to choose the premium option. But most people are either going to always look for a bargain or just choose the cheapest options. Most people want to feel like they're getting a deal. So if you're just offering what everyone else is offering, right, a simple home buyer consultation, a simple home equity analysis, right, a simple buyer consultation, they're going to look at you the same way they look at everyone else. And the moment that you can be compared, your conversions are going to drop. You want to present your stuff as an offer more, again, like I mentioned in the last part of the series that was supposed to be this part. But you want to think of all the different things that could stop someone from getting the result they want and put something together for each of those parts and then put that all together. Right? That is when you create a grand slam offer. And so now that we got these two big mistakes out the way, right? If you want to close more clients than you can realistically handle, you're going to need to understand first this framework. This framework is something I got from a guy who's worth well over 9 figures and got to that point by the time he was in his early 30s, which is insane to think about. But this guy, Alex Hormozi, he talks about something called the Grand Slam offer, right? So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And as always, Lisa and Molly, quick little check. Can you see my screen? Let me know so I make sure I am good before I keep it going. Okay, perfect. I'm starting to get the hang of this a little bit. Okay, so let's get this out the way. So a lot of times people say, oh, it's not that hard. You just got to give them something valuable. So what does valuable even mean? Like, how do you provide value? So I'm going to give you guys the formula right now to deliver value. So V is value, right? Value equals, right, D-O. What does D-O stand for? Let me put a dot there. Yeah, D-O stands for dream outcome. What is the outcome that your clients want? Is it buying a home? Is it downsizing, right? Is it getting an investment property? What is that dream outcome? And a extra bonus part is, why do they want that dream outcome, right? I want to get my first investment property so I can, start building wealth and eventually quit my 9 to 5, right? Or whatever, right? But what is the dream outcome that someone is looking for, right? Multiplied by P L. What does PL stand for? Perceived likelihood, right? You have your dream outcome, let's say, buying a home. What is the perceived likelihood that they think they can do it? Now, it's important that you keep in mind this P here is very important here. Even if there's a high likelihood, if they don't perceive a high likelihood, they won't think that they can do it. So it's important that your audience thinks that they can achieve whatever dream outcome it is that you're helping them get, right? So you have dream outcome times perceived likelihood over, we got a little fraction going, right? TD. TD stands for time delay. How long will it take for them to get the result that they're looking to get, right? Will it take 1 day? Will it take 1 year? Will it take 10 years? And then TD is multiplied by ES, effort and sacrifice. So how much effort and sacrifice are they going to have to put in to make sure that this dream outcome happens, right? If you have this framework in mind, you'll be able to put together offers that people can't say anything but yes to, right? And it's really important to understand this little key important part right here. Most people online and most other agents and marketers, They're only focused on this thing up top, right? How can we sell the shiniest, shiniest outcome? How can we sell the biggest dream? And there's a lot of people now that are selling dreams and getting away with it, and it's causing the market to become jaded, right? I feel like we are currently in a trust recession, right? People are less and less trustworthy because one, they're starting to realize that most people aren't actually doing what they claim to be doing. But two, AI has become so helpful that they can just reach out to AI and get whatever information they're looking for. So most people are trying to get this up as high as possible, which is really important and a good thing to do. But what the biggest companies are doing, they're trying to get the bottom half of this equation as low as possible, right? Now, if you understand or remember anything from mathematics, anything divided by zero equals infinity. So let's do a quick example. Let's say you want to help someone buy a home, right? Let's say you're gonna help them buy their first house, become a homeowner. That's the dream outcome. Let's say the perceived likelihood. They think that there's a great chance that they can do it, right? But it takes them 10 years to do it, and they have to save 50% of their income and not take any family vacations. Yes, you're still giving that dream outcome, but it's taking way too long to do it, and they have to give up way too much to do it. So that won't be very valuable. But let's say, again, you help them get that first home, they think that they can achieve it, and the moment they sign that the buyer agency contract, right, or buyer broker contract, whatever you want to call it, it happens instantly, and they don't have to do anything but just sign the paper, and they instantly become homeowners. Now the value shoots through the roof, right? So when you're pitching these people, you want to figure out, okay, what dream outcome is it that they want? How can I make them see that there's a high likelihood that they can do it? How can I make this happen as quickly as possible for them without them having to give up much? If you can do that, then you will have a offer so good that people will feel stupid saying no to. Now, let's do a live demo. So Lisa or Molly, whichever one comments first, who wants to be my volunteer for this example here? Whoever comments first wins. Let's see. Alrighty, Lisa, you are my volunteer. So, Lisa, I'm going to ask you a few questions, right? So, you're working with downsizers, as I know already. I want you to list out for me what are all the main problems that a downsizer has, right? And while you're doing that, I'm going to start writing some down on my end, right? I'm going to start writing some down. So right now, we're going to create a Grand Slam offer. Grand Slam offer. There we go. So first step is list out problems. And now we're going to list out all the common problems that someone downsizing has, right? Too much stuff, repairs, timing on the move. Okay, perfect. Too much stuff, right? Repairs, timing on the move. Now, we could probably keep on going with this, but for the sake of this example, we're just going to keep it pushing. So now that we have the problems, now the next steps are we got to list out all the potential solutions for them, right? So first problem here is too much stuff. Well, how can we solve that? Well, I can personally help them clean, right? I can hire someone for them to help them clean, I can provide a list of declutterers and housekeeping companies to offer to clean and help. What are some other ways? I can buy one of those automated robot vacuums / mops to clean for them, right? I can bring, let's say, a dumpster. There we go. A dumpster, right? Now we can go on and on and on and on with these, and we can get super creative, but we're just gonna go on to the next one, right? Repairs. We can do I can provide them, let's see, with a list of home inspectors, right? I can personally fix everything. I can provide them with a contractor, and so on and so forth, right? We can keep on going, keep on going. And for timing on the move, we could, let's say, we can provide a video course going over the timeline of downsizing, right? We can create a checklist so things stay on track. Here we go, stay on track. We can, let's see, what else can we create? We can, let's see. We can, let's see, we can create a personalized calendar for them with dates and checkpoints planned, right? We can create a ton of different solutions for them, right? Now, this exercise, you could probably go through this for hours and hours just thinking of, okay, what are all the potential hiccups? What are all the potential problems that they'll have during the process? And then how can you get ahead of every single problem? Now from here, what you want to do is you're going to remove all the low value items, right? So all the items, for example, that don't provide any value. So this one right here, for example, right? I can buy one of those automated robots and vacuums and mops. That's probably not going to help them all that much. Could it help them clean? Maybe a little bit, right? So we're going to get that. I can bring a dumpster, right? Will that help them? Maybe, maybe not. I'll personally help clean them, right? Let's see. I can bring someone. Boom. Now we're down to 2, right? Repairs, right? Let's say I can provide them with a list of home inspectors, right? I can personally fix everything. Boom. I can provide them with a contractor. Timing on the move. Who's really going to watch a video course? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Checklist. They help people stay on track. But I think the calendar is the best thing. So after you create all the different potential solutions for them, right? You want to kind of go through and then start removing stuff. Because, of course, you can't offer everything, right? Because then when it comes to your pitch is going to be so long, you'll never be able to get through it, right? You want to be clear and concise. And if they have other problems, then, hey, I got something for it, right? After you start removing all the ones that are low value, right? You want to name them something. You want to give them all a name, right? So instead of saying, here's a list of decluttering companies and housekeeping companies, you can say, here's my my home cleaning cheat sheet, right? My home cleaning cheat sheet with all the best cleaners in town. Boom, right? For the repairs, we got the repair specialist, the repair specialist cheat sheet, specialist cheat sheet with a list of all the best contractors to fix any potential repairs that you may have for the home, right? For the timing of the move, right? You can say we have my downsizing calendar. Boom. So now when someone starts asking you, hey, like, what do I get when I work with you? Now you can actually tell them what's going on. And then from there, once you get through that process, right, some of the things that you can start doing with your offer is you can add 3 very important things, right, that'll help your offer become even better. Scarcity, urgency, and guarantees. These 3 things will help take your offer from just a regular thing that someone's offering to something that makes people, again, really want to take you up on your offer. And you think of, like, if you look back on, like, economics, right? In economics, we're taught something that looks a little bit like this. We have a graph here. We have supply and we have demand, right? And then here we have price, right? So as price goes up, right, demand typically goes down. And as price is down, so, the demand is pretty high. And this is usually why most realtors just make an average living. And most businesses make an average living, right? This is what most people charge, right? When you add scarcity, urgency, and I forgot the fourth, guarantees and bonuses, right? It makes the demand increase, allowing you to now charge even more for your services than you were originally offering. Or if you're not going to charge more, get even more conversions, right? If you don't charge more, you just get way more demand, right? And more people to work with. So you can do 2 routes, right? You can work with less people and charge more, or you can just work with more people altogether and charge the same. But when you add scarcity, urgency, bonuses, and guarantees, that helps people get more demand for what you're offering. So let's say we're going to keep on going with this here, right? We're going to keep on going with this here. In here, boom, 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 boom. Right? Now we're going to add some bonuses, right? So, Lisa, really quickly, you said delayed possession. What are some other parts of the downsizing process that someone would find valuable? And while you're typing that in the chat, Lisa, I think of one. Bonus number 1 is, let's see, if it's someone like you, Lisa, who's downsizing in a different state, right? It could be my top realtor list, right? For the state you're moving to. Top realtor list, right? For every state in the country. So no matter where you're moving to, where you're downsizing to, there's someone that I can connect you with. Again, this is something that you would already do, right? You're already going to send a referral out to somebody. But when you start, again, compartmentalizing all the different parts of what you do, it helps people realize how much value you're actually providing to the clients. Another potential benefit bonus that you could do, right, is um, let's say someone's trying to downsize and um, they needed, let's say, storage bins, right? Boom. My Let's say you have a storage unit specifically for working with clients, or there's actually some agents that I know that have their own moving truck, right? So um, let's say the Lisa legendary movers. Again, I'm not saying to go start a moving company, but I do know an agent that actually has a moving truck. So this is something that you can start offering. Like, okay, what is something that no one else is doing, right? No one else has a moving company of their own. But let's say you offer this as a service. Now, again, this is going to start branching you off into a category of one, right? Where no one can compare you to, right? And let's say you want to add some scarcity to this, right? You can say an easy way to add scarcity is figure out how much clients can you realistically work with in a month. Let's say for you, Lisa, you can only do 10 listings in a month, right? So you can say this is available only for the first 10 people, right? I can only handle 10 clients per month, right? And you can put a positive spin on this, right? Instead of saying I can only handle, you could be something along the lines of, hey, because I want to ensure all my clients get the utmost attention, we limit our services to only 10 exclusive clients every single month, right? Now people know, like, okay, I got to make sure I take Lisa up on this, right? I want to be one of those 10s. Urgency could be something along the lines of, here we go. Here we go. Urgency could be something like this. Um, only if you book a consultation before Friday, right? Only if you book a consultation before Friday. So scarcity is based on like a quantity amount. Urgency is more based on time. So you can use both. You could use one or the other, right? But when you're again pitching from a webinar, it's important to use one or the other, ideally both, so that you can get people to take action. Because if people don't have a reason to take action now, they will not take action now, right? Offer staging. Lisa says she's offered staging, mover quotes, senior resources that is necessary for selling their house. Yeah, these are all amazing things, right? The problem that most people do is that they don't tell people about the amazing stuff that we have to offer, right? And so like this is why this exercise of like compartmentalizing everything, right, shows you, wow, like I actually do so much for my clients, but I just treat it as if this is whole one service. Like, no, I'm doing multiple things. I need to start showing them and helping them understand the different things so they can actually value what I do, right? All right. And then the last part is guarantee, right? Again, you can have multiple kinds of guarantees. So I'm not going to do a whole masterclass on just guarantees alone, but you can say, hey, I have the love me or leave me guarantee, right? If you don't love my service for any reason, you can call it quits and we'll part ways as friends. ways as friends. No strings attached. Boom, right? And so now you have a guarantee. So this is all super important stuff because again, when you start adding these bonuses, the scarcity, the urgency, the guarantee, right? The bonuses is like, oh my goodness, I'm getting so much more valuable. The scarcity and urgency is like, oh my goodness, I gotta act now. The guarantee is like, oh my goodness, I don't lose anything by making this decision. Like I'm not gonna get screwed over if I make the decision. A lot of times people have been screwed by people in this industry. If you look at like the industry with the worst sentiment or like the worst stereotypes, it's like used car salesmen, life insurance agents, and like right underneath that is like real estate professionals. And so like by doing this, you're kind of easing them into it. So like again, it doesn't feel like they're committing to something too grand. It's like, oh no, I get these bonuses, right? And like I get this guarantee. I have an out in case I need it, right? Which is gonna make people more likely to take you up on the actual offer, right? And so again, once you do all this work, right, this would probably take you hours alone. I just kind of speed burst it, like blitz through this. But once you kind of get through this, then from there, when you're presenting your offer, right, you want to make sure you show all the core components to it, right? Showcase all the core components. And when you're presenting, right, if I were to present this, right, it'll be a little something like this, right? So, assuming I was giving a webinar, right? Assuming I was giving a webinar, I'm going to walk you through pretty much exactly what it would look like if I were to present this here live in front of you guys, right? So, it would look a little something like this. All right, I'm going to use this. All right. Lisa, can you see my new screen that I'm sharing? I just shared a different page. Let me know if you can see this new screen, Lisa or Molly. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's get right into this new presentation. So, assuming I was actually giving a live webinar, right? I would say something along the lines of this. All right, so let me ask you guys a question. I put together a really cool special offer for you guys, and I wanted to know if it's okay if I spend the next 5 to 10 minutes going over it. And they were like, "Yeah, of course, John. Yeah, of course." So I put together a really cool offer for anyone that's looking to downsize. I call it the dream downsizing process, right? And here's what you're gonna get when you decide to take me up on this dream downsizing process. So the first thing is you're gonna get the the home cleaning cheat sheet, right? A lot of people I know, they have so many memories, they have so many things stored away in their garage, in their attic, in the basement. It's gonna be a mess to go through. And so I created this home cleaning cheat sheet to help you get the help you need to make sure your house is ready to downsize, but more importantly, to bring the stuff that is valuable, that holds memories to your next home, your forever home, right? You're gonna get a list of all my favorite declutterers, a list of all my favorite housekeepers, right? And you're gonna get a list of all my favorite storage companies, right, to help you with this process, right? I had Lizzie, who sold her house with me, say that decluttering her home was the best thing she could ever do. She didn't know where on earth to start, and decluttering was like hiring a declutterer helped ease and give her ease and peace of mind. Right? We had Sally. Sally, she was in a bit of a different situation. She had all her stuff tucked away already, but cleaning the house was just so overwhelming. And so we got her connected with one of my favorite housekeeping companies, and they came through and made her house look brand new. And even listen, Bob was a nightmare in terms of his garage, but with the right help, we was able to get him at a very affordable rate and very quickly people to come in and bring his garage back to life. Before you couldn't see anything through it, and now you can walk in and stretch your arms out finally, right? And this home cleaning cheat sheet, like, it doesn't matter how messy your house is. It doesn't matter how dirty you think your house is. We have the people to help you for it. Like, doesn't matter where you are in your journey, and to help take care of the precious memories that you made, right? Now, don't worry if you don't have the money saved for house cleaning services or decluttering services. One of the things that I offer you guys is I actually pay for it up front myself, and then you just at closing will pay it back. That way you don't even have to worry about fronting any cash, right? I'll do that for you. So that's the first thing you're gonna get is my home cleaning cheat sheet, total value of $250. Right. The next thing you're gonna get is my what do I got here? My repair specialist cheat sheet. So I think a lot of times when you live in a home for so long, things maintenance can kind of go to the get forgotten a little bit because you've been there for a while, and a lot of times when it's time to sell, those repairs that are long overdue are going to come up in negotiations, and they could potentially kill the deal. And so, one thing I created is this home repair cheat sheet to help you know there's a lot of people in the the trades that aren't the most trustworthy when it comes to quote. So everyone that I have on this cheat sheet here is people that I've personally worked with over the years, because I want to make sure that you're in the best hands possible when you get the repairs done for your home. So after this, you'll be able to find a good general contractor or a good roofer, a good landscaper, whatever you need to make sure your house is in tip-top condition to be ready to sell. Once we get this, right, you don't have to worry about doing any DIY home repairs. You don't have to worry about going based off of word of mouth and hoping that you could trust a guy. You're not going to have to worry about vetting general contractors. I'll take care of that whole process for you so you don't have to manage anything, right? Yada, yada, yada. This is going to save you so much time. My contractors are going to give you guys the best rates. And again, you don't have to worry about fixing anything yourself. So now you're going to get the cheat sheet, right, which is the home cleaning cheat sheet, $250 value, my repair specialist cheat sheet, $500 value. But what else do you need? Well, you're going to need to, get things in a schedule, right? Downsizing, it could be a long process. And if you don't have someone on top of you, right, it could be very tough. So I created this personalized downsizing calendar. I'm going to get with you, and we're going to plan out what the next 12 months look like so that there's no surprises or hiccups, right? I'm going to walk you through some dates and some checkpoints for each step of the process so that we can stay on track and make sure that you get into your forever home 12 months from now, right? That way we're not procrastinating and everything gets done, right? I had to downsize myself, and when I was figuring it out the first time, I was all over the place. Nothing was organized. Nothing was neat. Everything was all over the place. And it's ended up taking me 3 years to downsize and get everything fully like moved over. If I just had someone to like lay out what the roadmap looked like, that would have helped me save months and months and months, right? So now you're gonna get hold on one second. You're gonna get the home repair cheat sheet. You're gonna get the cluttering cheat sheet. You're gonna get the personalized calendar, right? Total value of, let's say, $1,000, right? $1,000 value on this. Now, obviously, I'm not gonna charge you $1,000, right? I didn't come here to sell you, right? But let's just say I did. If all this did was finally help you get in your forever home 12 months from now, would that be worth it? If all this did was finally help you, right, get all your stuff together and cleaned and decluttered, would it be worth it? Of course, right? Like, decluttering no one really likes cleaning, right? It's annoying, especially when you haven't. It's long overdue, right? But last question: if all this did was give you that peace of mind and that clarity that you're looking for, right? So you don't have to worry about losing out on all the precious memories you made in this home, right? Would that be worth it? Of course, right? You can't put a price on memories, right? So I had two choices when I was creating this presentation for you guys. I could either, first option is, I could just offer you like a little quick 30-minute consultation and, talk to you a little bit, but I don't really think that'd be valuable for you, right? There's more steps involved. This is a very big process. And so the second option was to put together this special offer and think of everything from A to Z. Like, what are all the potential hiccups you might have along this way, and put something together that solves all of it. And so obviously I chose the second, right? And so like, what would be the, what is downsizing? Like, what is finding that perfect forever home worth to you, right? Like that forever home where you can invite your kids and your grandkids and whatever, whatever, whatever. Like, what would that be worth for you? Like, what would those memories with your grandkids be worth? Right? Just being able to move close to your family, right? Being able to remember the scrapbooks and all that stuff, not having to worry about losing it or throwing it out because you didn't have enough space. Like, what would that be worth to you? All those memories. See, this dream day downsizing process isn't a cost. It's an investment towards your future, the later stage of your life, and making sure that you can downsize and live the later years peacefully and actually get to enjoy them, right? So as you can see, this would be a great deal as $1,000, and maybe for the general public soon, I'll even start charging them $500, right? That's what I plan to. But because you guys are special, because you guys are all here live with me, right? You guys can get started today, just now, free, right? Free. Like, now you have two options, right? You have two options. You can now either first option, do nothing and not take this leap of faith, which literally costs you nothing. It's free to book a consultation with me. Or B, right? You can go to the link at lisasdreamdaydownsizing.com and book your consultation on my calendar before spots fill up. And let's get you in your perfect forever home, right? And again, I have this, love me or leave me guarantee. For whatever reason, when we start working together, if you don't love the service I'm providing for you, no strings attached, you can cancel at any time. Listen, I don't want to work with you if you don't want to work with me. If you don't think that I'm the person for you, I'm not going to force you to stick in this contract with me, right? The real question is do you think I'm the person for you, right? Do you think if you follow what I laid out today that you can find that perfect forever home? Because if so, here's what you get. Listen, you're gonna get all this value. You're gonna get the dream day checklist. You're gonna get the home repair cheat sheet. You're gonna get the blah 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 and this and that, right? And for the first 10 people, right, that book a consultation, right, I got bonuses for you, right? For the first 10 people, you're going to get my top realtor list. So if you're downsizing in any other state, I'm going to give you my personalized list of people in that state for you to downsize to, right? You're also going to get my Lisa's Legendary Mover service, right? If you're moving anywhere locally, my moving company, my personal moving company will help move all your stuff to ensure that everything gets to your next home safely, right? But that's only for the first 10 people. So again, here's all the stuff that you're going to get, yada, 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 right? Total value $1,000. You can just book your consultation today for free. I have some questions. What question you got for me? Boom. And that's essentially what it is, right? Again, when you looked at the presentation in the slide deck, right, it seems like, super hardcore, but like when you sell this way, like you're helping people see that like, hey, you've already laid out everything that's going to happen and created a solution for that. And so when you're presenting it, it's like, yo, I can't have any objections. They know the whole process and they already got something for every step in the process. And so Lisa and Molly, if you guys are still here with me, was that like valuable to see, like kind of that live demo of like how you would actually pitch this in front of somebody? Like how do you actually present this from a webinar? Because I feel like sometimes you can draw out an offer, you could talk about how to present, but like I feel like sometimes seeing it is a little different. Cool. All right, cool. Good to know. All right, cool. So that is essentially how you sell from a webinar, right? It feels weird at first, just like anything. But again, once you realize like, hey, I'm not selling them. They need this. And I've done the work of thinking about every potential mistake, problem, hiccup possible in the process. I've thought of every possible solution that I could potentially think of and figured out which ones should keep in and which ones should keep out. All to get you guys to see that I'm the right person for you. So when you do this, again, it shifts from hard selling to, hey, opportunity presenting. And so now that you have an offer, right, I went out of order, but in the next video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to create your actual slide deck so that you can now put what we learned in the last video, your presentation outline, what we learned in this video, which is your offer, put that together into your slide deck and have your $1 million presentation created. All you got to do is click here. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, cool. Time for our regular break. What questions do you guys have about creating an offer? I know I went through that one kind of quick too. What question do you have about offer creation or putting together an offer or pitching the offer? And while you're doing that, I'm going to get some water really quickly. Any questions? Let's see. All right. So, if there are no questions, I have good news and bad news. The good news is there's only 2 parts left to this series, right? The next part of this series is creating your actual funnel, right? What's the funnel? The funnel is like the landing page, the email sequences, the automations, all that stuff, right? That is part 5. Part 6 is generating traffic. How can we consistently and predictably get people to attend our webinars, right? That is the next 2 steps. So we're pretty much more than halfway through. We're almost literally like 2/3 of the way through. Bad news. I am losing my voice a lot faster than expected. I thought I would be able to get through this entire thing and didn't realize how taxing it would be on my vocal cords. So we're going to do a quick poll. If we were to take a break for today and hop back on tomorrow at 12 to finish the last 2, would that be okay? Let me know in the chat. Lisa and Molly, if you're still here with me, let me know. Is it okay if we come back tomorrow at 12 to finish up the rest? Because again, my vocal cords are getting strained to the max. Yes, but I might not be able to make it. Okay. All right, cool. Yes, I have to go anyway. Okay, perfect. So we're going to end this stream. I appreciate you for sticking with me this long. Tomorrow, again, we're going to pretty much put together the last 2 pieces of the puzzle, creating the funnel and generating traffic. So I appreciate you all so much, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow. If not, you catch the replay. I'll make sure to send it out to everyone. Take care.